We might not be the only ones looking up at the sky. Countless UFO sightings and reports of alien encounters suggest we could have already been visited without even knowing. The possibilities intrigue many researchers. One prevailing theory proposes that these unexplained phenomena involve spacecraft and intelligent beings from distant worlds. Our documentary explores fascinating cases that challenge our understanding of reality. Many accounts are sourced from declassified files that remained secret for decades. One such remarkable incident occurred at Kapustin Yar, the Soviet equivalent of Area 51, during the summer of 1948. This military base, established in 1946 for missile and rocket testing, was under strict surveillance. On an ordinary afternoon, radar systems detected something extraordinary moving at high speed across the sky. Operators quickly alerted officers, who dispatched a fighter jet to intercept the mysterious target. The pilot approached and witnessed something unprecedented: a massive metallic disc-shaped craft displaying impossible aerial maneuvers. Following orders, he opened fire, causing the craft to lose altitude and crash near the base. Immediate military response followed. The wreckage, partially destroyed, revealed technology far beyond contemporary understanding. Leaked reports years later claimed that small beings with large heads and dark eyes were found inside the craft. Soviet authorities swiftly secured the area, transferring the craft's remains to an underground facility. Rumors persist that both the wreckage and its occupants underwent extensive examination, with attempts to understand and potentially replicate the advanced technology. Yet, to this day, no official documentation confirms the incident ever occurred. Another intriguing case unfolded at Talavera La Real Air Base in Spain on November 12, 1976. 3 soldiers on patrol with a German Shepherd experienced something extraordinary. A strange noise resembling static interference, followed by a sharp, high-pitched beep, preceded a light entering the base perimeter. Initially believing it might be a terrorist attack during a period of political instability, the soldiers were confronted with an unexplained phenomenon that would challenge their understanding of reality. In the summer of 1982, Soviet military divers were conducting underwater exercises in Lake Baikal when they encountered something extraordinary. Towering humanoid beings, nearly 10 feet tall, stood before them in the depths. These figures wore tight-fitting silver suits with black, helmet-like spheres covering their heads. The humanoids moved with an unnatural grace through the frigid waters, seeming completely at ease in an environment that should have been hostile to them. Amazed by the sight, the divers tried to get closer for a better look. On January 20th, 1996, an event in Varginha, Brazil, left the community bewildered. It was a cloudy morning typical of the rainy season when 3 women, aged 14 to 22, were walking through an open field. Suddenly, they spotted a strange creature with brown skin and red eyes crouched near a wall. The being had an oversized head with unusual protrusions on its forehead. Terrified, the young women fled, rushing to tell their families about their incredible encounter. Local authorities quickly arrived and sealed off the area. Witnesses reported seeing Brazilian military vehicles transporting an unidentified object. Rumors spread rapidly that additional creatures had been captured in the city, and talk emerged of an injured being taken to a medical facility under heavy security. As fear gripped the community, media interest intensified. The Brazilian government denied any contact with extraterrestrial beings, attributing the panic to a misunderstanding. In another strange incident, a group of soldiers experienced an unsettling encounter with an unidentified entity. While trying to contact their base, they suddenly spotted a towering humanoid figure with elongated arms, emitting a soft green glow. One witness described the being as wearing a tight metallic suit with a black helmet. When the dog attempted to approach the figure, an invisible barrier seemed to block its path. In a shocking turn of events, the being made a sudden movement, causing one soldier to collapse. His fellow troops responded by firing hundreds of rounds at the entity. Unexpectedly, its glow intensified before vanishing completely. 3 military witnesses fell into comas, with one later developing neurodegenerative diseases. In 2016, Spain's Ministry of Defense declassified this case along with dozens of other files, adding to the mystery of these extraordinary encounters. After a military diving team reported a strange sighting, their commanding officer ordered the capture of an unusual phenomenon. Suddenly, an invisible force pushed the divers back, forcefully propelling them toward the surface. The incident resulted in devastating consequences. 3 military personnel lost their lives, while 4 others survived but suffered serious after effects. Though quickly hushed up, rumors began spreading among soldiers and scientists about what truly happened. Reports of underwater beings and numerous UFO sightings sparked speculation about potential alien bases within the lake. Some researchers suggest these entities might have coexisted with humans for millennia, potentially even predating human existence on Earth. Local residents add intriguing details, describing occasional sightings of glowing silver discs plunging into or emerging from the water with a thunderous roar. The military's choice of training dive locations might not have been coincidental. On September 16, 1994, an extraordinary event unfolded in the quiet rural countryside of Zimbabwe at Ariel School in Ruwa, southeast of Harare. Children playing during their school break were about to experience something remarkable. A metallic craft suddenly emerged from the clouds, descending smoothly and settling in a nearby wooded area. The children watched, transfixed, as small humanoid figures with large, dark eyes and elongated heads stepped out and moved across the terrain. One being approached, establishing what the children described as a telepathic connection. They reported receiving a profound warning about the planet's future. As quickly as they appeared, the beings returned to their craft and vanished into the sky. Local authorities were notified but initially skeptical. However, the children's remarkably consistent accounts attracted researchers from around the world. Multiple interviews failed to reveal any discrepancies in their stories. In December 2017, 3 declassified videos released by the Pentagon shook the world. Captured by U.S. Navy pilots, these recordings challenged conventional aeronautical understanding and ignited a global debate. The first video, named Flare, was recorded in November 2004 by a pilot from the USS Nimitz, presenting extraordinary footage that defied explanation. 3 UFO videos sparked intense curiosity and debate. The first, captured through infrared sensors, showed an oval-shaped dark object hovering without any visible propulsion method. The craft moved at incredible speeds, executing rapid and abrupt turns that left the pilot astonished by its velocity and erratic behavior. In January 2015, 2 additional videos emerged. Gimbal depicted a saucer-shaped object gliding smoothly while rotating on its axis, causing pilots to watch in disbelief. Despite strong winds, the object maintained remarkable stability. Garft showed another UFO skimming swiftly over the ocean, small and elongated, moving at a steady pace. Pilots struggled to track it due to its incredible speed, and the absence of a propulsion trail made the sighting even more mysterious. The Pentagon confirmed these videos' authenticity, but offered no explanation. Experts emphasized that the observed maneuvers far exceeded any known human aircraft capabilities. Another remarkable incident occurred on September 27, 1989 in Voronezh, a city south of Moscow. On a cool afternoon, children playing in a local park witnessed an extraordinary event. A glowing, oval-shaped craft, emitting a reddish light, descended and touched the ground, drawing everyone's attention. As onlookers watched in awe, a hatch opened, revealing 2 towering beings and a small robot. These humanoid figures, nearly 10 feet tall, with small heads and piercing gazes, emerged. One raised an arm, releasing a paralyzing light beam that engulfed witnesses. Time seemed to stand still in an atmosphere charged with unexplainable energy. After what felt like an eternity, the beings retreated into their craft. The hatch sealed, and the ship instantly soared into the sky. Subsequent investigations discovered unusual ground markings indicating a heavy object's landing and detected abnormally high radiation levels in the area. Travis Walton and his work crew were traveling home in a pickup truck after a long day in the woods. The forest road stretched before them as they headed back from an exhausting shift. Suddenly, a brilliant light cut through the darkness, illuminating the entire area. The men stopped their vehicle, watching in stunned silence as a disc-shaped craft hovered among the trees. Its soft, steady hum filled the air while lights flickered in a hypnotic pattern. Drawn by a mix of curiosity and awe, Travis Walton stepped out of the truck without hesitation. As he approached the craft, a beam of light shot out, striking him and hurling his body through the air. His horrified companions watched as he crashed to the ground, motionless while the craft began to ascend. Overcome with fear, The crew fled at full speed, leaving Walton behind. Minutes later, guilt and dread compelled them to return, but both Travis and the craft had vanished. His disappearance triggered a massive search, with rescue teams combing the area. Days passed with no sign of him, and rumors of death or abduction spread throughout the small town of Snowflake. Walton's co-workers underwent lie detector tests with mixed results, though their accounts remained credible. Then, 5 days after his mysterious disappearance, Travis reappeared at a gas station miles from where he was last seen, disoriented and confused. He described waking up in a brightly lit room surrounded by short humanoid beings with large eyes, bald heads, and pale skin. According to his account, he initially resisted until a human figure in a helmet moved him to another location. There, 3 more humans placed a mask over his mouth, causing him to lose consciousness. His next memory was walking along a highway with the UFO hovering above him. On December 26, 1980, deep within Rendlesham Forest in England, another strange encounter unfolded. In the middle of the night, US soldiers stationed at Woodbridge Air Base spotted a series of unusual lights moving silently between the trees. These soldiers, deployed during the Cold War, decided to investigate. Upon reaching the site, they encountered a triangular craft with a metallic sheen hovering just above the ground. Pulsating, multicolored lights emanated from the strange vehicle, adding to the mysterious atmosphere of the encounter. Night sky erupted with an eerie glow as soldiers felt a thick static charge in the air. Sergeant Jim Peniston approached the strange craft, touching its surface and noticing intricate inscriptions carved into its exterior. Within minutes, the object slowly ascended and vanished into the darkness. The next day, a military team investigated the landing site. They found 3 triangular impressions where the craft had rested. Nearby trees bore damage, and abnormal radiation levels were detected. British and American military authorities quickly dismissed the incident, attributing it to misidentified stars or the Orford Ness Lighthouse. Terrors of Caleres Island. In 1977, a series of horrifying events began on Caleres Island, located at the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil. Unknown lights appeared over the town, described as color-changing spheres flying low over houses. These weren't mere sightings, the lights actively pursued people. Witnesses reported the lights firing beams that caused burns, dizziness, and exhaustion. Night after night, they returned, forcing residents to seek safety indoors. Some began sleeping in groups or arming themselves, believing they were under attack by mysterious lights. As fear grew, the Brazilian Air Force launched Operação Prato. Military personnel arrived with cameras, radar systems, and weapons, determined to uncover the truth. For weeks, they witnessed impossible maneuvers, lights directing beams at civilians. Officers documented the phenomenon through photographs and testimonies, yet couldn't determine its origin. Months later, the strange lights ceased their harassment. The operations report was classified for years, only partially declassified decades later. Captain Wee Range Hollander reported personally observing luminous objects with maneuvers suggesting intelligent control. The Yotsuro Bun incident in 1803, off the coast of Hitachi, Japan, fishermen discovered a mysterious vessel floating in the sea. They named it Utsurubun, meaning hollow ship. The circular vessel featured glass windows and metallic panels, adding to its enigmatic nature. In the hills near Calvine, Scotland, 2 men hiking in August 1990 experienced something extraordinary. A massive diamond-shaped craft hung in the sky, completely silent and motionless. They quickly captured several photographs, their disbelief growing as a military jet approached the scene. Within minutes, the craft ascended rapidly and vanished. The men shared their images with a local newspaper, which then forwarded them to the Ministry of Defense. For years, the photographs remained classified, shrouded in mystery. In 2022, one image was finally unveiled, revealing striking details. Experts have described these as the clearest and most credible UFO photographs ever taken. Craig Lindsay provided an authentic copy of the original photo, which the UK Ministry of Defence had analysed in 1990. Detailed examination found no evidence of tampering in either the photograph or the print. Similar intriguing encounters have been documented elsewhere. In 1980, near Arequipa, Peru, a remarkable incident occurred at La Joya Air Base. Approximately 1,800 personnel witnessed a spherical craft hovering motionless in the sky. The commanding officer, suspecting espionage technology, dispatched a Sukhoi Su-22 fighter jet to intercept. pilot Oscar Santamaria encountered a round, silver object with a transparent dome, lacking windows or visible propulsion systems. Despite firing 64 rounds, the craft showed no signs of damage. Santamaria believed some bullets struck the target, but they seemed to be absorbed by the sphere. The UFO demonstrated incredible agility, shifting direction and altitude with ease, completely outmaneuvering the fighter jet. Interestingly, some historians link these encounters to older folklore. Illustrations from the 1840s reportedly contain symbols reminiscent of later UFO sightings. One such story involves fishermen encountering a woman in unusual clothing, holding a box she refused to let anyone touch. Unable to communicate due to language barriers, the encounter remains mysterious. While Japanese historians view such accounts as local folklore, some ufologists argue they could represent genuine extraterrestrial encounters. Became the epicenter of a UFO mystery during 2 consecutive weekends in July 1952. On the night of July 19th, clear skies provided the perfect backdrop for an extraordinary event that would challenge understanding of aerial phenomena. Radar screens at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base began detecting strange objects moving with no predictable pattern. Air traffic controllers watched in bewilderment as these unidentified objects appeared and vanished erratically, performing incredible speed maneuvers that defied explanation. Commercial pilots reported witnessing incredible lights performing extraordinary aerial movements. The phenomenon continued into early morning hours, spreading panic as news of the sightings reached media outlets. The city seemed to be under some form of mysterious surveillance. On July 26, the lights returned in even greater numbers. The Air Force responded by scrambling 2 F-94 Starfire jets to intercept these objects. Pilots saw flashes of light, but each time they attempted to close in, the UFOs darted away at incredible speeds. To calm public concerns, the Air Force held a press conference on July 29th. General John Samford, Director of Intelligence, dismissed the radar-detected objects as pranks, misidentified aircraft, or electrical phenomena. Meanwhile, another significant incident had occurred years earlier in July 1947. On the plains of New Mexico, a rancher named Mac Brazel discovered strange debris on his property near Corona. The wreckage included metallic sheets, rubber strips, and small fragments unlike anything he had seen before. Brazel took the pieces to the sheriff's office, who then contacted the nearby Army Air Base. Major Jesse Marcel was dispatched to investigate the site. On July 8, 1947, a military press release announced the recovery of a flying saucer. However, the very next day, the story changed. The wreckage was now claimed to be from a weather balloon. One pilot's encounter during this period stands out. For 22 minutes, he attempted to chase a mysterious object that suddenly accelerated upward and vanished into the sky. To this day, it remains one of the rare instances where a human pilot has opened fire on a UFO. And after fading from public memory following the official explanation, the Roswell case resurfaced in 1978 when researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Major Marcel. Marcel claimed the debris was alien and that the government had covered it up, describing a metallic sheet that crumpled easily but returned to its original shape when released. Years later, Marcel's son, Jesse Marcel Jr., stated that his father had shown him extraterrestrial wreckage, including one piece with strange symbols. By the 1980s, new witnesses emerged, claiming alien bodies had been recovered. In 1989, Glenn Dennis, a mortuary employee in Roswell, said the military had called him asking about small, airtight coffins. During the 1990s, additional witnesses came forward, alleging they had seen extraterrestrial bodies in hangars or military trucks. In 1994, the USA Air Force released a report reaffirming that the wreckage was part of Project Mogul, a classified balloon program. By 1997, a second report dismissed claims of alien bodies, explaining that the figures people saw were actually test dummies used in parachute experiments. On April 24, 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico, police officer Lonnie Zamora was patrolling the streets late in the afternoon when a deafening roar and a bright flash in the sky caught his attention. Believing it to be an explosion or a car crash, Zamora drove toward the source of the sound, heading into a remote desert area. Upon arrival, he was stunned. A metallic, egg-shaped craft was resting on the ground, with 2 humanoid figures nearby. The beings were small, dressed in gleaming suits, Dumbfounded, Zamora watched as they hurried into the craft and disappeared inside. Moments later, a thunderous blast erupted as the craft began to ascend. A blue flame shot from its underside before it accelerated and vanished from sight. Investigators from the Air Force and Project Blue Book examined the site, yet they failed to provide a definitive explanation. On October 11, 1973, in the quiet town of Pascagoula, Mississippi, an event unfolded that left a lasting mark on the lives of two men. It was a clear night when Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, two shipyard workers, decided to go fishing along the Pascagoula River. Out of nowhere, a brilliant blue light appeared in the sky, speeding toward them. Frozen in disbelief, they watched as an oval-shaped craft descended and hovered just above the water, not far from where they stood. Not an eerie object drifted silently, casting an illuminating glow across the entire area. Without warning, a hatch opened, revealing three entities that glided toward two men. These beings stood approximately 5 feet tall, characterized by grayish skin and elongated limbs ending in claw-like hands. Their unusual heads lacked visible eyes, instead featuring 3 long, cone-shaped protrusions where ears and a nose would typically be located. Completely paralyzed, the men found themselves unable to resist as the entities carried them inside the craft. Once inside, they were separated and subjected to what appeared to be medical examinations. Hickson described being scanned by a floating, eye-like device that emitted a sweeping light over his body. Parker, overwhelmed by shock, recalled fewer details and remained barely conscious throughout the entire experience. After what seemed like an endless ordeal, they were returned to the dock and released. The craft then swiftly ascended and vanished. Initially skeptical, authorities became convinced by the raw emotion in their accounts. Both men later underwent a polygraph test, which suggested they were telling the truth. Another extraordinary incident occurred on August 21, 1955, at an isolated Kentucky farm. The Sutton family and their guests were enjoying a peaceful summer evening when a sudden sky flash caught their attention, followed by an object descending into nearby woods. Billy Ray Taylor, one of the guests, stepped outside to investigate. Upon returning pale and shaken, he claimed to have seen a flying saucer land behind the house. Skeptical at first, the others followed him outside only to witness something truly terrifying. Small figures began emerging from the darkness. These creatures stood about 3 feet tall, with pointed ears, glowing eyes, and elongated arms. They slowly advanced toward the house. Terrified, the men grabbed rifles and fired, but the bullets seemingly bounced off the entities as if deflected by an invisible shield. The family retreated indoors, barricading doors and windows, while the beings attempted to enter. For hours, they remained trapped, listening to footsteps and scratching sounds on the roof and walls. Eventually, the entities slipped away into the night. When police arrived, they found no trace of the die, intruders only strange ground markings and evidence of the family's desperate attempt to defend themselves. Driving home from a vacation in Canada on a dark September night in 1961, Barney and Betty Hill experienced an encounter that would become one of the most famous UFO incidents in history. Their journey through the White Mountains took an unexpected turn when a strange light began following their car, moving unpredictably and growing larger as they continued down the deserted highway. Concerned, Barney pulled over and used his binoculars to investigate. He spotted a massive disc-shaped craft hovering at a low altitude. Overwhelmed by fear, he quickly returned to the car and sped away. However, the light descended and forced them to stop, positioning the enormous 100-foot craft directly in front of them. Through his binoculars, Barney could see humanoid figures inside the craft's windows. When they finally reached home, the Hills noticed unusual details. Their watches had stopped, the binocular straps were broken, and Betty's dress was torn. Seeking understanding, they consulted Dr. Dwyer, Seth, Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist specializing in regression hypnosis. Under hypnosis, Betty recalled seeing a map she believed depicted interstellar travel routes, which some researchers later suggested matched the Zeta Reticuli star system. She also described a physical examination involving a needle inserted into her abdomen. Barney's recollections were equally strange, describing beings with large heads and oversized eyes. A similar incident occurred on September 4, 1964, in the forests of Cisco Grove, California. Hunter Donald Schrum found himself lost as night fell, climbing a tall tree for safety. While perched on a branch, He noticed a distant light that initially seemed like a helicopter but revealed itself as a metallic disc-shaped craft. Beneath the tree, Shrum witnessed small, thin-bodied humanoid figures with glowing red eyes, accompanied by a towering robotic figure with luminous eyes. His night in the wilderness became a terrifying encounter that would echo the Hills experience, adding another chapter to the mysterious world of reported UFO encounters. The hunter Shrum found himself in a desperate situation high up in an unknown location. Entities were attempting to reach him, and despite his efforts to repel them, they remained persistent. He ignited multiple flares to drive them away, but they showed no signs of retreating. One of the beings deployed a tube that released a gas, causing Shrum to feel increasingly disoriented. In a state of terror, he fired every remaining flare and shot arrows from his bow. Yet these attacks seemed to have no effect on the beings. Hours passed as the humanoids continued their relentless attempt to ascend. Shrum struggled to maintain consciousness, fighting against the overwhelming fatigue and the strange presence surrounding him. Just before dawn, the entity suddenly withdrew, and their craft vanished into the sky. Exhausted and deeply shaken, Shrum descended and made his way to the road, where his hunting party eventually found him. This encounter echoes other mysterious incidents, such as the Ilkley Moor event in December 1987. Philip Spencer, a former police officer and amateur photographer, was walking across the Yorkshire moors when he spotted a small humanoid figure moving swiftly in the distance. He captured a photograph of the being near a metallic disc-shaped object emitting a faint humming sound. Spencer's experience took an unusual turn when he realized his watch had unexpectedly jumped ahead by 2 hours. The blurry photograph shows a small humanoid with elongated arms and an oversized head, though skeptics argue it could be a person or an animal. Another similar encounter occurred on May 10, 1978, in the Polish village of Emilcin. Jan Wolski, a local farmer, was traveling in his horse-drawn cart when he encountered two unusual figures. These beings were short, wore tight-fitting suits, and had greenish-toned skin. They climbed onto his cart silently, radiating an oddly peaceful presence. Wolski was then guided toward a large, silver oval-shaped craft hovering in a forest clearing. The beings lifted him onto a platform and into the craft's interior, which featured smooth walls and was bathed in dim ambient light. These accounts share striking similarities: unexpected encounters, unusual beings, and mysterious craft that seemingly appear and disappear at will. No, without speaking, the entities conducted an examination using advanced-looking instruments. Before departing, the beings made a subtle farewell gesture as the craft slowly ascended. Once finished, they escorted him back to the platform, gently lowering him to the ground. With a fluid motion, the object disappeared into the sky, leaving Wolski alone in the forest. At the site where the craft had hovered, strange imprints were later discovered on the ground. Local authorities took interest in the case, and Wolski underwent extensive psychological evaluations. Experts unanimously concluded that he was an honest man, showing no signs of mental instability or deception. On March 13, 1997, beneath the clear skies of Phoenix, Arizona, something unfolded that left thousands in awe. The night was calm until a formation of lights appeared, stretching across the sky in a massive V shape. Glowing amber in color, they moved in silence, defying explanation. Some witnesses described them as separate orbs. Others insisted they were part of a single, enormous craft. Reports flooded in from all over Phoenix, with countless people claiming to have witnessed the mysterious display. Police stations, Luke Air Force Base, and local news outlets were overwhelmed with calls from concerned residents. At first, military officials denied any knowledge of the phenomenon, leaving the public in confusion. Days later, Arizona Governor Fife Symington held a press conference featuring someone dressed as an alien, attempting to dismiss the event as a joke. Years afterwards, Symington admitted he had personally seen the lights and described the incident as otherworldly. The Air Force later explained that the glowing objects were flares dropped during training exercises at Luke Air Force Base. However, many witnesses rejected this claim, arguing that the lights they observed did not behave like flares. In September 1957, on the Brazilian beach of Ubatuba, a group of local fishermen was enjoying a sunny afternoon. Their peaceful day was suddenly interrupted by a bright object appearing in the sky, rapidly approaching the coast. It was a disc-shaped craft, clearly out of control. Descending at an incredible speed, it exploded in a blinding flash just before reaching the water. The fishermen watched in shock as the UFO shattered into thousands of fragments over the sea and shoreline. Rushing to the impact site, they found small metallic pieces scattered along the sand. Laboratories later conducted comprehensive tests on fragments of an extraordinary material, confirming it was composed of magnesium with an exceptionally high level of purity. A fisherman had originally collected these pieces and sent them to a journalist in Sao Paulo. Despite years of investigation, no definitive explanation was ever reached about what truly happened that day in Ubatuba. On September 19, 1976, an extraordinary event unfolded in the skies over Tehran that left the country's military completely bewildered. Multiple citizens reported witnessing an unusual light overhead, characterized by shifting colors and movements at extraordinary speeds that defied conventional aircraft capabilities. The Imperial Iranian Air Force responded by dispatching an F-4 Phantom II fighter jet to investigate. As the pilot approached the luminous anomaly, he was stunned by its erratic movements, rapidly accelerating and changing direction with impossible precision. Suddenly, the F-4's systems failed completely. The plane's instruments went dark and radio communications were lost. With no operational controls, the pilot was forced to turn back, at which point the aircraft systems mysteriously returned to normal. A second F-4 was quickly launched to continue the interception. Upon nearing the object, this pilot witnessed a light beam moving directly toward him. In a moment of panic, he attempted to fire a missile in self-defense, but every system on the jet simultaneously malfunctioned. Smaller lights seemed to accompany the main object, independently circling the F-4. The unidentified craft and its companions ultimately made a rapid ascent, vanishing from the area and leaving the Iranian pilots unable to pursue. Detailed reports were subsequently drafted and formally relayed to US and SUBMA authorities. In the French countryside, on a bright morning of July 1, 1965, Maurice Masserman, deeply connected to the land and known for his seriousness, was tending his fields when a sharp buzzing sound shattered the peaceful silence. Looking up, he was astonished to see a metallic grey, oval-shaped craft descending and landing gently on 4 slender legs. The disappearance of Frederick Valentik on October 21, 1978, young pilot Frederick Valentik took off from Melbourne in his Cessna 182L. While flying over the Bass Strait, an unexpected light caught his attention. Concerned, he contacted air traffic control, reporting an unidentified object approaching. Valentik described a large, elongated craft with no wings, no visible engines, and glowing green lights. Controllers confirmed no other aircraft were in the area. He then stated the object seemed to be toying with him, flying overhead and following his every move. Shortly after, he reported the craft was hovering directly above him and insisted it was not an airplane. Just before the transmission abruptly cut off, his Cessna vanished from radar, as if swallowed by the sea. An extensive search was launched, yet no trace of the plane or its pilot was ever found. To this day, no one knows what Valentik truly witnessed or what happened in his final moments. The beings of Kofu in the quiet city of Kofu, Japan, on February 23, 1975, 2 young boys experienced an encounter that would capture national attention. Masato Kawano and Katsuhiro Yamahata, both 7 years old, were playing in a field near their homes when a glowing object appeared in the sky, descending gradually. Fascinated, they watched as it settled in a nearby vineyard. Intrigued, he cautiously approached, noticing a small door had slid open without a sound. From inside, 2 beings emerged, each about 3 feet tall, with oversized heads and slender bodies, clad in tight-fitting suits. Their large eyes exuded an eerie sense of calm, almost hypnotic in nature. One of the beings raised a small device and pointed it at Mas, instantly overwhelming him with a heavy drowsiness. Though paralyzed, he remained fully aware as he watched the entities methodically inspect the field, moving around the craft with precise, deliberate steps. After what felt like mere minutes, they returned to their ship. The craft lifted off, emitting the same buzzing sound, before vanishing at astonishing speed. The incident was investigated by the National Gendarmerie and specialists in aerial phenomena. Researchers visiting the site found unusual ground markings as if the soil had been exposed to extreme heat. Years passed before the vegetation fully recovered but the lavender plants never regained their former strength. The Cash Landrum incident unfolded on December 29, 1980, along a rural Texas highway. Eddie Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson Colby were returning home after a pleasant dinner when their peaceful journey took an extraordinary turn. As they drove through a dense pine forest, a bright glow suddenly appeared in the sky. Frightened, they pulled over to investigate. A massive diamond-shaped object descended, hovering at a low altitude and emitting intense flames toward the ground while producing a deafening roar. Etty stepped out of the car for a closer look, but the extreme heat forced her back. Without warning, nearly 20 helicopters arrived on the scene. As the UFO ascended, the aircraft pursued it until both vanished into the distance. The three continued their journey, but the encounter left profound consequences. They soon developed severe symptoms including skin burns, nausea, and hair loss. Despite reporting the incident to authorities, the Air Force denied any involvement or knowledge of the helicopters. Meanwhile, on August 25, 1974, another mysterious event was unfolding deep in Mexico's Chihuahua Desert. That clear night, Mexican military radar detected an unidentified object entering the country's airspace. Moving at incredible speed and appearing out of control, the craft was heading toward the mountainous region near Coyame, a small desert town. Simultaneously, a civilian aircraft took off from El Paso, Texas, on a southbound flight. Air traffic controllers quickly lost contact with both the unidentified object and the civilian plane. At sunrise, search teams discovered the wreckage, adding another layer to this enigmatic story. A craft with a disc-like shape and a dome on top had emerged, emitting a pulsating orange light. Two small beings had reportedly emerged from the craft. Described as short with brownish skin, large heads, and elongated arms, they wore glowing uniforms. Their bizarre appearance and awkward movements led the witnesses to describe them as demons. One being held a strange device that emitted a light beam, seemingly paralyzing those nearby. A creature reached out and touched a witness's shoulder, momentarily immobilizing them. Moments later, the beings returned to their craft, which ascended swiftly before vanishing into the sky. The Allagash abductions unfolded in August 1976, when four artist friends ventured into the remote wilderness of northern Maine. Their planned quiet fishing trip on Allagash Lake would become an extraordinary encounter that would haunt them for years. On the night of August 20th, while canoeing peacefully, one of the men spotted an unusual light on the horizon. Initially appearing like a distant star, it quickly transformed into something much larger and closer. A glowing object steadily approached, growing in size and intensity. As the object neared, the men watched with increasing unease. A radiant, silent presence hovered menacingly over the lake. Panic set in as they frantically paddled toward shore, but the object tracked their every movement, eventually engulfing their canoe in an intense beam of light. Suddenly, everything went black. Upon regaining consciousness, they found themselves on land with no memory of how they arrived. Their abandoned campfire, reduced to embers, suggested far more time had passed than they recalled. In the years following, each of them began experiencing recurring nightmares connected to that night. Through their dreams, fragmented memories emerged of being taken aboard a craft and subjected to medical examinations by strange humanoid beings. In 1988, 12 years after the incident, the four friends sought professional help. Through regression hypnosis, they separately revealed strikingly detailed accounts of their alleged abduction. This incident was not the only mysterious event involving unidentified craft. In another compelling case, a civilian aircraft's crash was accompanied by an even more astonishing discovery. Near the crash site, a metallic disc-shaped craft was partially embedded in the ground, showing signs of high-speed impact, yet remaining remarkably intact. Mexican military forces initially secured the area, establishing a perimeter to examine the wreckage. They discovered the craft was composed of an unknown material. However, before they could transport the object to a military facility, unmarked helicopters suddenly appeared. Men in military-style uniforms, lacking any identifying insignia, swiftly took control. The Mexican team was replaced, and both the mysterious craft and the downed aircraft were discreetly transported away. The Mexican government never provided an official explanation. Some speculate that U.S. forces intervened to recover the craft, fearing it contained extraterrestrial technology, a theory that remains unconfirmed but tantalizing. 1981, Renato Nicolai was working his field when a sharp buzzing sound broke the silence. Looking up, he saw a metallic, disc-shaped craft descending toward the ground. The object touched down in a clear area with hardly a sound, remaining briefly on the surface before rapidly ascending and vanishing into the darkness. Stunned, Nikolai approached the landing site and discovered two concentric rings imprinted on the soil. The ground appeared scorched, as if exposed to intense heat, and nearby plants looked withered. Concerned, he reported the incident to authorities, who quickly arrived to investigate. France's study group on unidentified aerospace phenomena took the case seriously. Their analysis confirmed the soil had been subjected to extreme pressure, and physical and chemical anomalies in the vegetation suggested possible exposure to electromagnetic radiation. On January 7, 1948, an unexpected event unfolded over Kentucky involving Captain Thomas Mantell in his P-51 Mustang. What began as a routine flight suddenly changed when an emergency call from Godman Air Force Base reported an unidentified flying object. Witnesses described an enormous metallic craft hovering high in the sky. Mantell was ordered to intercept the mysterious object. Without hesitation, he accelerated and climbed toward it, reporting a massive shining silver disk. However, something went wrong as he continued to ascend. At high altitude, he likely suffered from oxygen deprivation, causing him to lose consciousness. At 25,000 feet, his aircraft became unstable and entered a steep dive. The plane crashed into an open field, killing Mantell instantly. The true cause remains disputed. Some claim it was a weather balloon, while others insist it was a genuine UFO. Another extraordinary incident occurred on the night of December 11, 1996, in Canada's Yukon Territory. Nearly 30 witnesses from different locations reported seeing an unidentified flying object of staggering size. Some compared it to a football field. With lights bathing the night landscape in an eerie glow, a mysterious craft glided silently at low altitude over roads and lakes. Some described the shape as a boomerang, or V configuration, completely blocking out the stars as it passed overhead. Authorities launched an investigation, yet no explanation was ever found for the sighting. In 2003, the town of Wigan, Lancashire, became the stage for an event that would baffle both investigators and residents. One witness claimed to have seen 17 spacecraft flying in a V-shaped formation. The objects were oblong with wings and displayed varying colors. The most astonishing detail emerged when the witness reported seeing extraterrestrial beings with green skin and cream-colored bellies. In another remarkable incident, the French government made public a UFO report from August 29, 1967. In the small village of Cussac, 13-year-old Francois and his 9-year-old sister Anne-Marie were tending their cattle when an extraordinary encounter unfolded. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, everything peaceful until Francois spotted unusual figures on the horizon. Initially mistaking them for playing children, he soon realized they were 4 small beings with black skin and oversized heads. The siblings watched in shock as the creatures moved around a floating metallic craft spherical, with a dome on top reflecting sunlight with an almost blinding glare. Frozen in fear, Francois and Anne-Marie stood still as one being turned, emitting a high-pitched sound. In an instant, the figures floated up and disappeared into the hovering sphere. Without a sound, the craft began to spin and shot upward into the sky. Terrified, the children ran back to the village to report their experience. Later, authorities investigating the scene detected a strong sulfur-like odor at the alleged landing spot. Another notable incident occurred on February 28, 1999, along a road in Corbridge, United Kingdom. Witnesses reported an enormous object in the night sky, a craft the size of 10 football fields with a distinct arrowhead shape. Its scale and unusual form made this case particularly remarkable. The Falcon Lake UFO's Stefan Michalak was an amateur geologist exploring the shores of Falcon Lake, Canada, on a crisp morning in May 1967. While examining rock formations, he heard an unusual high-pitched beeping sound from above. 2 disc-shaped objects descended, with one landing smoothly on the rocky surface, while the other quickly flew away. Thinking it might be an experimental aircraft, Michalak approached cautiously. He felt intense heat radiating from the craft and noticed a hatch opening, revealing an interior with flashing lights and mechanical sounds. Despite attempting to communicate, he received no response. Suddenly, the craft began rotating, and a blast of scorching air erupted from a side vent, throwing Michalak backward. Later investigations found traces of radiation at the landing site and a significant magnetic anomaly, leaving Michalak physically and emotionally scarred. The Exeter incident on a quiet night in September 1965, 18-year-old Norman Mascarello was walking home along a deserted road in Exeter, United States, when he spotted a massive glowing oval-shaped UFO hovering silently. Terrified, he ran to the nearest police station. Officer Eugene Bertrand, convinced by Mascarello's genuine fear, accompanied him back to the site. To his astonishment, the UFO was still present, gliding slowly without a sound. The object then moved closer to their patrol car, flooding its interior with an intense glow and displaying impossible aerial maneuvers. Gripped by fear, both men watched as the UFO eventually drifted away and vanished into the night. The Air Force later dismissed the sighting, attributing it to commercial aircraft lights or planetary refraction. The Kenneth Arnold case: on a clear day in June 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold was flying over the Cascade Mountains in Washington. Suddenly, flashes of metallic light caught his attention in the distance, marking the beginning of a remarkable encounter. On a clear day, pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted something extraordinary in the sky: 9 thin disc-shaped objects reflecting sunlight like mirrors. Their movement was unlike anything he'd seen before. Skipping across the sky like stones on water, these objects traveled at an incredible speed of approximately 1,700 miles per hour, which was astonishingly fast for that time period. With no visible tails or propulsion systems, they moved erratically before quickly disappearing behind a mountain range. When Arnold described his sighting to reporters, he compared their motion to saucers skipping across water. This casual description inadvertently gave birth to the term flying saucers and sparked a global fascination with unidentified flying objects. On December 9, 1965, a dramatic event unfolded over Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. A glowing object streaked across the sky, leaving a fiery trail. While some initially thought it was a meteorite, the object's behavior suggested something more unusual. Instead of burning up in the atmosphere, it seemed to maneuver deliberately before descending into a nearby forest. Witnesses described a bell-shaped object with strange hieroglyphic-like markings. Almost immediately, military personnel sealed off the area, raising immediate suspicion among local residents. Soldiers prevented civilians from getting close, and townspeople reported seeing the object loaded onto a military truck. The official explanation claimed it was a meteor, but the secrecy surrounding the incident only fueled further speculation. Another remarkable incident occurred on November 2, 1957 in Levelland, Texas. Around 11 p.m., Pedro Sosordo and Joe Salaz were driving down a dark highway when a radiant, bluish object appeared above them. As the craft hovered over their vehicle, Sosordo's truck engine inexplicably shut down. When the object vanished, the engine restarted as if nothing had happened. Other witnesses reported similar experiences: a large object approaching their vehicles and causing electrical failures that disabled engines and headlights. Despite these accounts, the Air Force investigation concluded the witnesses had likely observed atmospheric phenomena. The UFO phenomenon continued to captivate public imagination, with each mysterious sighting adding to the growing mythology of unexplained aerial encounters. Noted in Welsh village of Broadhaven, something extraordinary happened during a typical school recess. 14 children were playing in the fields behind their school when their playtime was suddenly interrupted by an unbelievable sight. A silver craft with a dome on top had landed nearby, dimly illuminated against the landscape. As the children watched in astonishment, a humanoid figure emerged near the vessel. Clad in a form-fitting metallic suit, the figure moved slowly, seemingly surveying the surrounding area. Initially, the teachers dismissed the children's account as mere imagination. However, as more students independently shared identical details, school officials began to take the story seriously. The consistency of their descriptions suggested something remarkable might have occurred. The encounter raises profound questions about our understanding of the universe Could unknown technologies be derived from such mysterious encounters? Are we truly prepared for potential contact with beings from other worlds? Would our society be capable of confronting such a reality? Perhaps we are not alone in looking to the skies. Many suggest we might have been visited without even realizing it. Observations of UFOs and extraterrestrial beings continue to challenge our perception of reality. While numerous theories exist, a prevalent belief centers on the possibility of spacecraft and intelligent entities from distant worlds. These accounts, often emerging from previously classified documents, hint at encounters that defy conventional explanation. Our understanding of such phenomena remains incomplete, leaving room for wonder and speculation about what might exist beyond our current knowledge. Not de Sovjetdotter hebben de kapusten jaarbasis snel veiliggesteld nadat een onbekend vaartuig was neergestort. Het raak, gedeeltelijk vernield, vertoonde de technologie die destijds niet bekend was. Jaren later uitlekkende rapporten beweerden dat zich in het ruimtevaartuig kleine wezens bevonden met grote hoofden en donkere ogen. Het rakkende inzittenden zouden zijn overgebracht naar een ondergrondse faciliteit binnen de basis met pogingen om de technologie te repliceren. Deze militaire basis, opgericht in 1946 als testlocatie voor raketten, bestaat nog steeds. Tot op heden heeft echter geen enkele officiële documentatie bevestigd dat dit incident ooit heeft plaatsgevonden. Op de luchtmachtbasis Talavera La Real in Spanje speelde zich in de nacht van 12 november 1976 een bijzondere gebeurtenis af. 3 soldaten op patrouille, vergezeld van een Duitse herder, hoorden plotseling statie en een scherpe, hoge pieptoon. Een licht drong de omtrek van de basis binnen. Gezien de politieke instabiliteit dachten de soldaten aanvankelijk aan een terroristische aanslag. Pogingen om contact te maken mislukten. Na het geluid van brikkende takken voorzien een orenshoge mensachtige figuur met langwerpige armen en een zachte groene gloed, een getuige beschreven strak metalen pak en wat leek op een zwarte helm. De hand werd tegengehouden door een onzichtbare barrière. Plotseling viel een soldaat neer na een beweging van het wezen. Zijn collega's openden het vuur met honderden kogels. De gloed werd intenser en verdween vervolgens. Geheel 3 militair getuigden raakten in coma en 1 ontwikkelde later neuratieve ziekten. In 2016 heeft het Spaanse ministerie van Defensie deze zaak vrijgegeven samen met tiental andere dossiers. Op 20 januari 1996 vond in de staat Varginha, Brazilië, een gebeurtenis plaats die iedereen verbijsterd achterliet. 3 women between 14 and 22 years old were walking through an open field when something caught their attention. A strange being with brown skin and red eyes was crouched near a wall. This small creature had a large head and protrusions on its forehead. Panicked, the young women fled, rushing to tell their families about what they had just witnessed. Witnesses reported seeing Brazilian military vehicles transporting an unidentified object. Rumors quickly spread that more beings had been captured in the city, and talks emerged about a wounded individual being transported to a medical facility under heavy security. Fear spread rapidly and the media began reporting on the event with great interest. The Brazilian government denied any contact with extraterrestrial beings, attributing the panic to a misunderstanding. This incident echoes another remarkable encounter from the summer of 1982 in Lake Baikal. A group of Soviet military divers were conducting exercises when something totally unexpected occurred during a deep dive. They encountered towering humanoid figures almost 3 meters tall, dressed in tight-fitting silver suits with black helmet-like coverings over their heads. Despite the freezing water, these beings moved effortlessly as if they belonged to the environment. After reporting the observation to their superiors, a commanding officer ordered one of the beings to be captured. Suddenly, an invisible force pushed the divers back, driving them unexpectedly to the surface. This caused severe decompression. Sickness, 3 military personnel died, while 4 survived with serious consequences. The incident was quickly hushed up, but rumors began circulating among soldiers and scientists. Reports of underwater beings and various UFO sightings fueled speculation about potential alien bases in the lake. Some suggest these entities have existed alongside humans for thousands of years, or might have even preceded us on Earth. Not in fear, 16 September 1994, Voltroxygen buiten 1994, Voltroxygen buiten 1994, Voltroxygen buiten 1994, midden op de Ariel School in Rua, nabij Harare, speelden kinderen een bezorgende toon. Plotseling verscheen er een meter voertuig uit de wolken dat soepel daalde en stilhield in een bosrijke omgeving vlakbij de school. Die KDN staden vol verbazing. Klein mensachtige figuren met grote donkere ogen en langwerpige hoofden stapten uit het vaartuig. Zij bewogen zich over het terrein terwijl de kinderen bewegingloos toekeken. Eén wezen naderde en leek een stille boodschap over te brengen. De kinderen rapporteerden een telepathische verbinding waarbij ze een waarschuwing ontvingen over de toekomst van de planeet. Net zo snel als ze waren verschenen, keerden de wezens terug naar hun voertuig en verdwenen in de lucht. Lokale autoriteiten werden ingelicht, maar slechts weinigen namen de verklaringen serieus. Desondanks waren de verslagen van de kinderen zo consistent dat onderzoekers wereldwijd geïnteresseerd raakten. Herhaalde interviews bevestigen steeds dezelfde verhalen. Later, in december 2017 zorgden 3 vrijgegeven video's van het Pentagon voor mondiale opschudding. De eerste video, Flare genaamd, werd in november 24 door een USS Nimitz-piloot opgenomen. Een infrarood gedetecteerd ovalvormig object zweefde zonder zichtbare aandrijving, vertoonde ongelooflijke snelheid en maakte abrupte bewegingen. Een tweede video Jimmel toonde in januari 2015 een schotelvormig object dat soepel gleed en om zijn draaide, tot grote verbazing van de piloten. In een heldere middag van september 1918 ontvouwde zich een ongewone scène in een park in Voronezh, nabij Moskou. Terwijl kinderen speelden, verscheen plotseling een gloeiend ovaalvormig vaartuig met een meter-articulated wicket. Het straalde een roodachtig licht uit dat ieders aandacht trok. Langzaam daalde het object naar de grond, en een open luik onthulde een werkelijkheid die de getuigen zou verbijsteren. 2 enorme wezens, bijna 3 meter lang met kleine hoofden, kwamen tevoorschijn, vergezeld door een kleine robot. Hun doordringende blikken hielden iedereen in de ban. En van de wezens hief zijn arm op, en plotseling overspoelde een lichtstraal de omgeving. De tijd leek stil te staan, en de aanwezigen werden verlamd. Na wat een eeuwigheid liet trok het buitenaardse gezelschap zich terug in hun vaartuig. Het lag sloot, en een oogwenk verdween het schip in de lucht. Later onderzoeken onthulden ongebruikelijke grondmarkeringen en abnormaal hoge stralingsniveaus, wat de authenticiteit van deze bizarre ontmoeting leek te bevestigen. In een vergelijkbare context onderzochten wetenschappers en onderzoekers verschillende UFO-verschijnselen. Video-opnames, zoals Go Fast uit januari 2015, toonden objecten die zich op onverklaarbare wijze gedroegen. Kleine, langwerpige voorwerpen scheerden snel over de oceaan, te snel voor piloten om bij te houden. Het Pentagon erkende de authenticiteit van dergelijke beelden, maar onthield zich van verdere verklaringen. Deskundigen merkten op dat de getoonde manoeuvres vooruitstegen boven de bekende mogelijkheden van menselijke luchtvaartuigen. De afwezigheid van een zichtbaar voortstuwingsmechanisme maakte deze waarnemingen des te raadselachtiger en voerde de discussie rond buitenaards leven een onverklaarbaar fenomenen. De mannen kwamen geschrokken tot stilstand met hun voertuig en zagen een schijfvormig vaartuig tussen de bomen zweven. Een zacht, gestaag zoom vulde de lucht, terwijl de lichten in een hypnotiserend patroon flikkerden. Travis Walton stapte zonder aarzeling uit de truck, getrokken door een mengeling van nieuwsgierigheid en ontzag. Op het moment dat hij dichterbij kwam, schoot er plotseling een lichtstraal uit het vaartuig die hem raakte en door de lucht slingerde. Zijn geschokte metgezellen zagen hoe zijn roerloze lichaam op de grond neerviel, terwijl het vaartuig begon te stijgen. Overmand door angst vluchtte de bemanning in allerijl van het toneel Walton achterlatend. Schuldige wollens en paniek dwongen hen later terug te keren, maar tegen die tijd waren zowel Travis als het vaartuig verdwenen. Zijn verdwijning leidde tot een grootsheepse zoektocht waarbij reddingsteams het gebied uitkamden. Dagen gingen voorbij zonder enig spoor en geruchten over zijn mogelijke dood of ontvoering verspreidden zich door het kleine stadje Snowflake. Waltons collega's ondergingen leugendetectortests met wisselende resultaten, maar hun verhaal bleef grotendeels geloofwaardig. 4 dagen na zijn verdwijning dook Travis op bij een benzinestation kilometers verwijderd van de oorspronkelijke locatie. Hij vertelde over ontwaken in een helder verlichte ruimte, omringd door korte mensachtige wezens met grote ogen, kale hoofden en bleke huid. Volgens zijn verslag verzet hij zich totdat een menselijke figuur met een helm naar een andere locatie bracht, waar 3 personen een masker over zijn mond plaatsten, waardoor hij het bewustzijn verloor. Zijn volgende herinnering was dat hij verwaard over een snelweg liep, terwijl de UFO boven hem zweefde. When they reached the location, a triangular vessel with a metallic sheen hovered just above the ground. It emitted pulsating, multicolored lights that cast an otherworldly glow over the surroundings. The soldiers felt the air thick with static electricity. Sergeant Jim Peniston stepped forward and touched the craft, noticing strange inscriptions carved into its surface. After a few minutes, the object slowly rose before disappearing into the night sky. The next day, a military team was sent to investigate the landing site. They discovered 3 triangular impressions where the vehicle had rested. Nearby trees showed signs of damage and abnormal radiation levels were detected. British and American military authorities downplayed the event, attributing it to misidentified stars or the nearby Orford Ness Lighthouse. The hostile UFOs of Brazil in 1977, a series of terrifying events, began unfolding on Calheiros Island, at the mouth of the Amazon in Brazil. It all started one evening when unknown lights appeared above the city. Described as color-changing spheres, they flew low over houses, but these were not mere observations. They actively pursued people. According to witnesses, the lights fired rays at them, causing burns, dizziness, and exhaustion. They returned almost every evening, forcing residents to stay indoors after sunset. Some began sleeping in groups or arming themselves, believing they were under attack by mysterious lights. As fear escalated, Brazilian authorities decided to intervene. The Brazilian Air Force launched an investigation codenamed Operação Prato. Military personnel arrived equipped with cameras, radar systems, and weapons, determined to uncover the truth. For weeks, they personally witnessed the inexplicable. These lights performed impossible maneuvers and directed rays at civilians. Agents documented the phenomenon through photos and testimonies, but could not establish its origin. Months later, the strange lights stopped, harassing the island's inhabitants. The operations report remained classified and secret for years. Decennia na de oorspronkelijke ontdekking werden delen van de Operação Prato bestanden vrijgegeven. Kapitein Uwerange Hollander beweerde persoonlijk lichtgevende objecten te hebben die de bewegingen uitvoerden. In Japan deed zich in ATC een merkwaardig voorval voor. Vissers voor de kust van Hitachi ontdekten een mysterieus schip dat doelloos in zee dreef. Ze noemden het Utsurobuna, wat whole schip betekent. Het object was rond van vorm met glazen ramen en metallanian panellanian. Binnenin vonden ze een vrouw gekleed in vreemde kleding, met een doos die niemand mocht aanraken. Ze sprak geen Japans, waardoor communicatie onmogelijk was. Japanse historici zien dit als lokale folklore, maar ufologen opperen dat het wel eens een ontmoeting met een buitenaards wezen zou kunnen zijn. Sommigen wijzen op illustraties uit de jaren Yvonne 14 met symbolen die doen denken aan het Rendlesham Forest incident. In Augustus 1990 gebeurde iets bijzonders nabij Calvin, Scotland. 2 wandelaars zagen een enorm, routvormig vaartuig dat roerloos in de lucht zweefde. Verbijsterd fotografeerden ze het object. Een militair vliegtuig naderde, waarna het vaartuig plotseling opsteeg en verdween. De mannen stuurden hun foto's naar een lokale krant, die ze doorzond naar het ministerie van Defensie. Jarenlang bleven de beelden geheim tot in 2022 een foto werd onthuld. Craig Lindsay leverde een authentieke kopie van de originele foto, die door het Britse ministerie van Defensie was geanalyseerd. Experts beschouwen deze foto's als de duidelijkste en meest geloofwaardige UFO-opname ooit. Geen enkel bewijs van manipulatie werd gevonden. In 1980 van nabij Arequipa, Peru, op luchtmachtbasis La Joya een UFO-achtervolging plaats. Ongeveer 1.000 mensen waren getuige van een bolvormig ruimtevaartuig dat bewegingloos in de lucht zweefde. In de nacht van 19 juli 1952 was Washington D.C. getuige van een reeks UFO-waarnemingen die tot controverse en angst leidden. Radarschermen op Washington National Airport en Andrews Air Force Base begonnen meerdere ongeïdentificeerde objecten te detecteren. Zet verschillende en verdwenen grillig. bewogen met verbazingwekkende snelheden zonder waarneembaar patroon. Luchtverkeersleiders probeerden verbijsterd contact te maken, maar kregen geen antwoord. Het fenomeen hield aan tot in de vroege uurtjes, waarbij verschillende commerciële piloten melding maakten van lichten die buitenbewoonde manoeuvres uitvoerden. De paniek begon zich te verspreiden toen het nieuws over de waarnemingen de media bereikte. De stad leek onder een of andere vorm van buitenaards toezicht te staan. Op 26 juli keerden de lichten terug, dit keer in nog grotere aantallen. Op dat moment besloot de luchtmacht in te grijpen en 24 Starfire jets in te zetten om de objecten te onderscheppen. Toen de piloten dichterbij kwamen, zagen ze lichtflitsen, maar elke keer dat ze probeerden dichterbij te komen, schoten de UFO's met ongelooflijke snelheden weg. Om het publiek gerust te stellen hield de luchtmacht op 29 juli een persconferentie 9 juli. Een vergelijkbaar incident deed zich eerder voor met een Peruaanse piloot Oscar Santa Maria. In de overtuiging dat het om spionische technologie ging, gaf de commandant opdracht een Sukhoi Su-2020 straaljager op te stijgen en te onderscheppen. De piloot zag het object in de lucht. Het leek op een gloeiende ballon, maar er voelde iets mis. Het was een rond, zilverkleurig vaartuig met een transparante koepel erop, zonder ramen of enig zichtbaar voortstuwingssysteem. Toen hij de turbi kwam, vuurde de piloot een salvo van 64 kogels af, maar het vaartuig vertoonde geen tekenen van schade. Volgens zijn verslag geloofde hij dat enkel kogels het doel hadden geraakt, maar dat ze door de bol leken te worden geabsorbeerd. De UFO bewoog zich met ongelooflijke behendigheid, veranderde snel van richting en hoogte en was de straaljager te slim af. Gedurende 22 minuten probeerde hij het object te achtervolgen, maar het versnelde plotseling naar boven en verdween in de lucht. Tot op de dag van vandaag blijft dit een van de zeldzame gevallen waarin een Mexico-piloot het vuur op een UFO heeft geopend. In juli 1997 vond er iets buitengewoons plaats op de vlakte van New Mexico. Mac Brazel, een boer uit Corona bij Roswell, stuurt op vreemd puin op zijn terrein. Het wrak bestond uit metalen platen, rubberen strips en kleine fragmenten die hij nog nooit eerder had gezien. Nieuwsgierig bracht Brazel enkel stukken naar de sheriff, die vervolgens contact opnam met de nabijgelegen legerluchtmachtbasis. Major Jesse Marcel werd uitgezonden om de locatie te onderzoeken. Op 8 juli 1947 maakte een militair persbericht bekend dat er een vliegende shuttle was geborgen. De volgende dag veranderde het verhaal echter. Het wrak zou nu afkomstig zijn van een weerballon en Marcel toonde de perspuren dat er gewoon uitzag en niet van buitenaardse oorsprong was. Na deze officiële verklaring verdween de zaak uit het publieke geheugen. In 1978 kwam de zaak weer boven water. Onderzoeker Stanton Friedman interviewde Marcel, die beweerde dat het puin buitenaards was en dat de regering het in de doofpot had gestopt. Hij beschreef een metalen plaat die gemakkelijk kreupelde, maar bij het loslaten weer zijn oorspronkelijke vorm aannam. Jaren later verklaarde zijn zoon Jesse Marcel Jr. dat zijn vader hem buitenaardse wrakstukken had laten zien, waaronder een stuk met vreemde symbolen. In de jaren 80 kwamen nieuwe getuigen naar voren die beweerden dat er ook buitenaardse lichamen waren geboren. Glenn Dennis, een motorrijmedewerker in Roswell, zei in 1989 dat het leger hem had gebeld met vragen over kleine luchtdichte doodskisten. In de jaren 90 melden zich nog meer getuigen die beweerden buitenaardse lichamen te hebben gezien in hangars of militair vrachtwagens. De Amerikaanse luchtmacht bracht in 1994 een rapport uit dat bevestigde dat het wrak deel uitmaakte van Project Mogul, een geheim ballonprogramma. Een jaar later, in 1997, verwierp een tweede rapport de beweringen over buitenaardse lichamen. Er werd uitgelegd dat de figuren die mensen zouden feitelijk testables waren die bij parachute-experimenten werden vergrapt. General John Samford, directeur van de inlichtingendienst, beweerde dat de door de radar gedetecteerde objecten krappen verkeerd geïdentificeerde vliegtuigen of elektrische verschijnselen waren. In Socorro, New Mexico, reed politica Lonnie Zamora zijn gebruikelijke middengronden plotseling trok een overdovend geluid met een felle flits zijn aandacht. Hij dacht aan een mogelijke explosie of auto-ongeluk en reed naar de bron van het geluid in een afgelegen woestijngebied. Bij aankomst zag hij iets ongelooflijks, een metalen, evenvormig vaartuig op de grond met twee mensachtige figuren. De wezens waren klein en droegen glanzende pakken, Zamora kiek verbijsterd toe, terwijl ze zich snel in het vaartuig terechttrokken. En onder de explosie volgde toen het voertuig begon te stijgen. Een blauwe vlam schoot uit de onderkant voordat het snel uit het zicht verdween. Luchtmachtonderzoekers van Project Blue Book onderzochten de locatie, maar konden geen definitieve verklaring geven. Op 11 oktober 1973 veranderde de avond in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Het leven van twee mannen voorgoed, Charles Hickson en Calvin Parker, twee scheepswerfarbeiders, gingen vissen langs de rivier. Plotseling we zien een schitterend blauw licht aan de deur, hemel dat snel naderde. Een jaar rustloos zwevende walvormig vaartuig daalde neer en zweefde boven het water. Het wierp een verblindende gloed over het hele gebied. 3 vreemde wezens kwamen op hen af. Ze waren 1,5 meter lang, hadden een grijsachtige huid en lange ledematen met klauwachtige handen. Hun hoofden misten ogen, maar hadden 3 kegelvormige uitsteeksels waar normaal oren en neus zouden zitten. Wellicht werden de mannen in het vaartuig gedragen. Binnen werden ze gescheiden en ondergingen, wat leek op medische onderzoeken. Hickson beschreef een schrijvend apparaat dat hem scanneerde met overweldigend licht. Parker herinnerde zich minder, gedeeltelijk door shock. Na wat leek een eeuwigheid werden ze teruggebracht naar de kade en vrijgelaten. Nou, op een zinderende zomerzondag in augustus 1955 beleefde de familie Sutton op een afgelegen boerderij in Kentucky een nacht die alle logica te boven ging. Samen met enkel vrienden zaten ze ontspannen bij elkaar toen een plotselinge flits aan de hemel hun aandacht trok, gevolgd door een voorwerp dat neerdaalde in het nabijgelegen bos. Billy Ray Taylor, een van de gasten, hing polshoog te nemen. Bleek en Gishcock keerde hij terug met het verhaal dat hij een vliegende schotel achter het huis had zien landen. De anderen waren aanvankelijk sceptisch, maar wat volgde zou hun levens voorgoed veranderen. Kleinfiguren kwamen langzaam uit de duisternis tevoorschijn. Ze waren ongeveer 1 meter lang, met puntige oren, gloeiende ogen en langwerpige armen die richting het huis liepen. De mannen grepen handgeveren en schoten, maar de kogels leken af te ketsen, alsof de wezens beschermd waren. Doodsbang trok de familie zich terug in het huis en barricadeerde de deuren en ramen. Urenlang zaten ze gevangen, luisterend naar voetstappen en krassende geluiden op het dak en de muren. Uiteindelijk verdwenen de wezens even mysterieus. Als ze waren gekomen. Toen de politie arriveerde, vonden ze geen spoor van de indringers, slechts vreemde markeringen op de grond en bewijs van de wanhopige verdedigingspoging. Een vergelijkbaar incident overkwam Barney en Betty Hill op een donkere septembernacht in 1961. Terwijl ze terugkeerden van een vakantie in Canada, verscheen een licht aan de hemel dat hun auto leek te volgen. Het object bewoog zich onvoorspelbaar en werd steeds groter. Bezorgd stopte Barney en stapte uit met zijn verrekijker. Hij zag een enorm schijfvormig vaartuig op lage hoogte zweven. Toen hij dichterbij kwam, overviel hem een overweldigende angst en sprintte hij terug naar de auto. Die autoritenten waren aanvankelijk sceptisch, maar de rauwe emotie in de verslagen overtuigde de agenten dat er iets ongewoons was gebeurd. Beide koppels ondergingen later een polygraaftest, waaruit bleek dat ze de waarheid spraken. Op een avond reden de Hills over de snelweg, toen hun rit plotseling werd onderbroken door een enorm vaartuig. Door zijn verrekijker zag Barney verschillende ramen met mensachtige figuren. Het voertuig, met een doorsnede van ongeveer 30 meter, zweefde recht voor hen uit en dwong hen te stoppen. Na thuiskomst merken ze vreemde details op. Hun boeien stonden stil. De bandjes van de verrekijker waren kapot en Betty's jurk was gescheurd. Ze besloten contact op te nemen met Dr. Turner, Benjamin Simon, een psychiater gespecialiseerd in regressie-hypnose-diagnoses, kwamen bijzondere herinneringen naar boven. Betty herinnerde zich een kaart met vermeende interstellar reisroutes, die jaren later door onderzoekers in verband werden gebracht met het sterrensysteem Zeta Reticuli. Ze beschreef ook een lichamelijk onderzoek waarbij een naald in haar buik werd ingebracht. Barney vertelde over mensachtige wezens met grote hoofden en enorme ogen. Een soortgelijke ontmoeting vond plaats op 4 september 1964 in de bossen van Cisco Grove, California. Donald Trump was op hertenjacht en raakte verdwaald toen de schemering inviel. Hij besloot in een hoge boom te klimmen voor zijn veiligheid. Terwijl hij op een stevige tak zat, verscheen in de verte een licht dat langzaam dichterbij kwam. Aanvankelijk dacht hij aan een helikopter, maar het bleek een metalen, schijfvormig voertuig. Onder de boom verschenen kleine magere figuren met gloeiende rode ogen. Naast hen stond een torenhoog robotfiguur met lichtgevende ogen te klimmen, maar hadden moeite hem te bereiken. Schram stak woordpijlen aan om ze af te weren, maar ze lieten zich niet afschrikken. En van de wezens gebruikte een vreemde beest die een gos verspreidde, waardoor hij duizelig werd. Doodsbang vuur de Schram alle beschikbaar voor pielen af en shortpielen met zijn boog. Toch bleven de wezens onaangetast. Urenlang hielden ze vol terwijl hij vocht om bij bewustzijn te blijven. Op een koude decemberochtend in 1907 wandelde Philip Spencer, een voormalige politieagent en amateurfotograaf, door de verlaten heidevelden van Yorkshire. Terwijl hij rondwaalde, zag hij in de verte beweging een klein mensachtig figuurtje dat snel bewoog. Onrustig hief Spencer zijn camera en maakte een foto van het wezen. Hij zag dat de figuur onderweg leek naar een metalen, schijfvormig object dat vlak boven de grond zweefde en een zwak zoemend geluid uitstraalde. Even later verdween het vaartuig in de mist. Verwaard besloot Spencer naar huis te gaan, maar besefte dat zijn horloge 2 uur vooruit was gegaan. Zijn foto, hoewel wazig, leek een kleine mensachtige af te beelden met langwerpige armen en een groot hoofd. Sceptici hebben betoogd dat de figuur een persoon of een dier zou kunnen zijn, hoewel er geen definitieve verklaring is overeengekomen. Op 10 mei 1978 vond in het kleine dorpje Emilsyn, Polen, een onverklaarbare gebeurtenis plaats. Het was een zonnige dag toen Jan Wolski, een plaatselijke boer, in zijn door paarden getrokken wagen naar huis reed en een rustig bospad volgde. Onderweg zag hij 2 ongewoon figuren naast zijn voertuig lopen. De wezens leken mensachtig, maar waren klein, gekleed in uitsluitende pakken en met een groenachtige huid. Ze observeerden hem kalm en bleven stil, maar straalden toch een vreemd gevoel van vrede uit. Wolski toonde geen angst en vervolgde zijn reis, terwijl de entiteiten zonder een woord te zeggen op de kar klommen. Even later zag de boer een groot, zilverkleurig, ovaalvormig vaartuig boven een open plek in het bos zweven. De wezens leidden hem naar het object, waar een platform hem naar binnen tilde. Binnen vond hij een eenvoudige ruimte met gladde muren badend in zwak omgevingslicht. Zonder iets te zeggen voerden de entiteiten een onderzoek uit met behulp van geavanceerde instrumenten. Toen ze klaar waren, begeleidden ze hem terug naar het platform en lieten hem zachtjes op de grond zakken. Voordat ze vertrokken, maakten de wezens een subtiel afscheidsgebaar terwijl het vaartuig langzaam opsteeg. Met een vloeiende beweging verdween het object in de lucht, waardoor Wolski alleen achterbleef in het bos. Uiteindelijk, net voor zonsopgang, rokenden de entiteiten zich terug en verdween het ruimtevaartuig in de lucht. Uitgeput en Geshoop klom de jager naar beneden en begaf zich naar de weg, waar zijn jachtgezelschap hem vond. Op een zonnige middag in september 1957 werden lokale vissers aan de kust van Ubatuba, Brazilië, geconfronteerd met een ongewoon voorval. Plotseling verscheen een helder object aan de hemel dat snel naderde. Een schievormig vaartuig daalde met een ongelooflijke snelheid af. Net voordat het water zou raken, ontplofte het in een verblindende flits. De geschokte vissers zagen hoe de UFO boven zee en kastlijn uit elkaar spatte in duizenden fragmenten. Terwijl ze zich naar de inslagplaats haasten, vonden ze kleine metalen stukjes verspreid over het zand. Het materiaal was volkomen ongewoon en verschilde van alles wat ze ooit eerder hadden gezien. Op 13 maart 1977 veranderde de heldere hemel boven Phoenix, Arizona, dramatisch in formatie van lichten verscheen en strekte zich uit in een enorme vorm. Ze bewogen zich zwijgend voort, amberkleurig en ongrijpbaar. Getawidgen hadden verschillende interpretaties, sommigen zagen afzonderlijke lichtbollen, terwijl anderen beweerden dat het een enorm vaartuig betrof. Wanneer het heel Phoenix stroomden berichten binnen. Politiebureaus, Luke Air Force Base en lokale media werden overspoeld met telefoontjes van bezorgde burgers. Militair functionarissen ontkenden aanvankelijk alle kennis. De gouverneur van Arizona, Fife Symington, hield zelfs een persconferentie waarbij iemand verkleed was als buitenaardswezen. oceanschijnlijk om de zaak te ridiculiseren. Jaren later gaf Symington toe dat hij de lichten persoonlijk had gezien en beschreef het incident als buitenaards. De luchtmacht verklaarde later dat de lichten slechts fakkels waren die waren gevallen tijdens trainingoefeningen. Wielgethugen wezen deze uitleg echter resoluut van de hand, stellende dat de waargenomen lichten zich niet gedroegen zoals gewone fakkels. Een vergelijkbare zaak betrof Wolski, wiens verhaal door deskundigen serieus werd onderzocht. Na uitgebreide psychologische evaluaties concludeerden professionals anoniem dat hij een betrouwbaar getuige was, zonder tekening van mentale instabiliteit of bedrog. Op de locatie waar zijn beweerde vaartuig had gezweefd, werden later vrienden afdrukken op de grond ontdekt. Laboratoria analyseerden later de monsters en kwamen met verbazingwekkende resultaten. Tests toonden aan dat het puin was samengesteld uit magnesium met een uitzonderlijk hoge zuiverheid. Desondanks bleef het UFO-incident onbetrouwbaar een mysterie. Jaren van onderzoek leverden nooit een definitieve verklaring op voor wat er precies was gebeurd. Op 19 september 1976 vond boven Iran een buitengewoon luchtruimincident plaats dat het leger volledig verraste. Het begon met meerdere meldingen bij het luchtverkeersleidingscentrum van Teheran over een ongewoon licht aan de hemel. Het object vertoonde spectaculaire eigenschappen, het veranderde van kleur, bewoog met buitengewoon snelheden en voerde manoeuvres uit die verbovene mogelijkheden van conventionele vliegtuigen lagen. De keizerlijke Iraanse luchtmacht stuurde een F-4 Phantom toestel om onderzoek te doen. De piloot werd geschokt door de grillige beweging van het licht. Het versnelde snel en veranderde met onmogelijke precisie van richting. Plotseling faalden alle systemen van het vliegtuig. Die instrumenten werden donker, radiocommunicatie viel weg, waardoor de piloot gedwongen was terug te keren. Mysterieus genoeg kwamen de systemen later weer online. Een tweede F-4 werd gelanceerd voor de onderscheppingsmissie. Toen deze het object naderde, straalde het een lichtstraal rechtstreeks op de piloot. In paniek probeerde hij een raket af te vuren, maar opnieuw werkten alle systemen tegelijkertijd niet. Dat niet-hoofdobject werd vergezeld door kleinere lichten die onafhankelijk rond de FPV cirkelden. Uiteindelijk maakten de donker geïdentificeerde vaartuig en zijn metgezellen een snelle stijging verdwenen uit het gebied, buiten bereik van de Iraanse piloten. Gedelde rapporten werden opgesteld en het incident formeel doorgegeven aan de Amerikaanse autoriteiten. Een metaalgrijs of een valvormig vaartuig daalde langzaam naar beneden. Het landde zachtjes, ondersteund door 4 slanke poten. Geïntrigeerd naderde hij voorzichtig en maakte een kleine, geluidloos openschuivende deur op poort. 2 wezens kwamen naar buiten, elk ongeveer een meter lang, met extra grote hoofden en slanke lichamen, gekleed in nauwsluitende pakken. Hun grote ogen straalden een griezelig kalmerende uitstraling uit, bijna hypnotiserend. En van de wezens richtte een klein apparaatje op massa die onmiddellijk werd overweldigd door een zware slapperigheid. Verlamd bleef hij volledig bij bewustzijn, terwijl hij toekeek hoe de entiteiten methodisch het veld inspecteerden. Met nauw courage weloverwogen stappen bewogen ze zich door hun vaartuig. Nou, het leek als slechts enkele minuten keerden ze terug naar hun schip. Het stieg op met hetzelfde zoemende geluid, verdween vervolgens met verbazingwekkende snelheid. De nationale gendarmerie en specialisten in luchtverschijnselen onderzochten het incident. Onderzoekers die later de locatie bezochten, vonden ongebruikelijke grondmarkeringen die wezen op extreem hitte. Jaren gingen voorbij. De vegetatie herstelde zich langzaam, maar de lavendelplanten zouden nooit hun vroegere kracht terugkrijgen. Op 10 en 20 oktober 1978 vertrok de jonge piloot Frederick Valenti vanuit Melbourne in zijn Cessna, Melbourne en Nala. In zijn Cessna nu 12 hel. Terwijl hij over de Bass Strait vloog, trok iets onverwachts zijn aandacht. Een licht verscheen in de lucht. Bezorgd nam hij contact op met de luchtverkeersleiding. Hij meldde een ongeïdentificeerd object dat naderde een groot, langwerpig vaartuig zonder vleugels of zichtbare motoren met gloeiende groene lichten. Controleurs verzekerden hem dat er geen andere vliegtuigen in de buurt waren. Valenti verklaarde dat het object met hem leek te spelen. Boven zijn hoofd vloog en al zijn bewegingen volgden. Kort daarna meldde hij dat het toestel nu recht boven hem zweefde Hij hield vol dat het geen vliegtuig was, net voordat de transmissie abrupt werd onderbroken. Zijn Cessna verdween van de radar alsof de zee het had opgeslokt. Een uitgebreide zoektocht werd gestart, maar er werd nooit een spoor van het vliegtuig of de piloot gevonden. In de rustige stad Corfu, Japan, speelden twee jonge jongens een beslissende rol in een merkwaardige ontmoeting. Op 23 februari 1975 waren Masato Kawano en Katsuhiro Yamahata, beiden 7 jaar oud, aan het spelen op een veld nabij hun huis. Plotseling verscheen een groeiend object aan de hemel dat langzaam daalde neerstrijkt in een naburige wijngaard. Het water had een skyfachtige vorm met een koepel die een pulserend oranje licht uitstraalde. Nieuwsgierigheid en ontzag dreven de jongens naar het mysterieuze object. Bij het naderen werden ze geconfronteerd met twee kleine wezens die uit het ruimtevaartuig stapten. De entiteiten hadden een bruinachtige huid, grote hoofden, onduidelijke gelaatstrekken, langwerpige oren en lange armen. Zij droegen gloeiende uniformen en hun bewegingen waren zo onhandig dat de jongens hen als demonen beschreven. Een wezen hield een vreemd apparaat vast dat een lichtstraal in hun richting uitzond. De jongens probeerden te vluchten, maar bleken verlamd. Een wezen raakte Katsuhiro's schouder aan, waardoor hij tijdelijk bewegingloos werd. Kort daarna keerden de wezens terug naar hun voertuig, dat snel opsteeg en verdween. Een vergelijkbaar incident deed zich voor op 19 december, 19 december 1947, 19 december 1988. Eddie Cash, Vicky Landrum en Vicky's kleinzoon Colby reden langs een landelijke snelweg in Texas na een gezellige diner. Terwijl ze door een dicht dennenbos reden, verscheen plotseling een heldere gloed aan de hemel. Zij stopten geschrokken en zagen een enorm routvormig object dat vlammen naar beneden schoot met een overdovend gebrul. Betty stapte uit de auto, maar daar intens hittedoek hoorde te rewaarden en 20 helikopters arriveerden en achtervolgden het UFO-object, totdat beide uit het zicht verdwenen. De gevolgen waren ingrijpend. Betty, Vicky en Colby ontwikkelden ernstige symptomen, waaronder brandwonden, misselijkheid en haaruitval. Tot op de dag van vandaag blijft onduidelijk wat Valentik precies heeft meegemaakt tijdens zijn laatste momenten. On August 25th, 1974, a mysterious event unfolded deep in Mexico's Chihuahua Desert that remains shrouded in uncertainty. During a clear night, Mexican military radar detected an unidentified object entering the country's airspace, moving at an incredible speed towards the mountainous region near Cayambe, a small desert town. Simultaneously, a civilian aircraft departed from El Paso, Texas, heading south. Shortly after, air traffic controllers lost contact with both the unidentified object and the civilian plane. At sunrise, search teams discovered something extraordinary, the wreckage of the civilian aircraft, alongside a metallic, disc-shaped vessel partially embedded in the ground. Despite showing signs of a high-speed collision, the structure remained remarkably intact. Mexican military forces secured the area, establishing a perimeter to investigate the wreckage. They discovered the vessel was composed of unknown materials and decided to transport the object to a military facility for further examination. Before they could proceed, unmarked helicopters suddenly appeared, descending to the location. Men wearing military-style uniforms without visible insignias quickly took control of the operation. The Mexican team was replaced, and both the spacecraft and the crashed plane were discreetly removed. The Mexican government has never provided an official explanation for the incident. Some speculate that American troops intervened to retrieve the spacecraft, fearing it contained extraterrestrial technology. The incident was reported to the authorities, but the Air Force denied any involvement or knowledge of the helicopters. Non-Bertrand's en Provence UFO opened Cau de Midgard in January 1981, was Renato Nicolai, een plaatselijke boer en het werk op zijn veld in het zuidoosten van Frankrijk. En scheep zo in men geluid verbrak de stilte en trok zijn aandacht naar de hemel. Boven hem daalde een metal skyvormig vaartuig naar de grond. Het landde op een helder stuk land en maakte heel weinig geluid. Verstijfd van shock keek Nicolai toe, hoe de schijf even op het oppervlak bleef voordat hij snel opsteeg. Binnen enkele seconden verdween het in de duisternis. Nog steeds verbijsterd naderde hij de landingsplaats en ontdekte twee concentrische ringen die in de grond waren gedrukt. De grond leek verschroeid. Also hij was blootgesteld aan intens hitte en nabijgelegen planten zagen er verdord uit. Bezorgd meldde de boer de incident aan de autoriteiten, die al snel arriveerden om de mysterieuze gebeurtenis te onderzoeken. De Franse studiegroep voor ongeïdentificeerde lucht- en ruimtevaartfenomenen nam de zaak serieus. Analyse bevestigde dat de grond aan extreem druk was blootgesteld. Fysische en chemische afwijkingen in de vegetatie duiden op een mogelijke blootstelling aan elektromagnetische straling. Er waren 4 mannen die een onvergetelijke nacht meemaakten die hen jarenlang zou achtervolgen. Een gloeiend object begon naar hen toe te bewegen en werd gestaag groter. Ongemakkelijk keken de mannen toe hoe het dichterbij kwam en een stralende, stille aanwezigheid onthulde die boven het meer zweefde. In paniek peddelden ze verwoord naar de kust, maar het object volgde hun bewegingen en overspoelde de kano met een intens lichtstraal. In een oogwenk werd alles zwart. Ze konden zich niet herinneren hoe ze het land bereikten of hoeveel tijd er was verstreken. Het kampvuur dat ze hadden laten branden was tot sintels gereduceerd, wat erop duidde dat er veel meer tijd was verstreken dan ze zich herinnerden. Naarmee de jaren verstreken begon elk van hen terugkerende nachtmerries te ervaren, allemaal verbonden met die nacht. In hun dromen herinnerden ze zich dat ze aan boord van een vaartuig waren gebracht en aan medische onderzoeken door mensachtige wezens waren onderworpen. Uiteindelijk, in 1998, zochten de 4 professionele hulpen ondergingen ze regressiehypnose om de ontbrekende momenten opnieuw te beleven. Hun herinneringen waren vallend gedetailleerde onderzoekskamers, geavanceerde instrumenten en emotieloze wezens met grote zwarte ogen die hen zwakend gadesloegen. Het was een rustige middag met geen enkele verwachting van ongebruikelijke activiteiten tijdens de vlucht. Plotseling ontving de Godman luchtmachtbasis een noodroep over een ongeïdentificeerd vliegend object. Gedegen beschreven een enorm metalachtig voorwerp dat hoog in de lucht zweefde. Zonder aarzeling kreeg Montel de opdracht dit mysterieuze voertuig te onderscheppen en versnelde hij zijn toestel. Terwijl hij naderde, meldde hij een enorme glanzende zilveren schijf te zien. Maar er ging iets mis. Bij het verder stijgen begon hij de controle te verliezen. Vermoedelijk leed hij op grote hoogte aan zuurstofgebrek waardoor hij het bewustzijn verloor. Op 25.000 voet werd zijn vliegtuig onstabiel en maakte een steile duik. Hij stortte neer in een open veld en was op slag dood. De ware oorzaak blijft onbekend. Sommigen beweren dat het een weerballon was. Anderen houden vol dat het een echte UFO betrof. Op 11 december 1996 voltrok zich boven het Yukon-territorie in Canada iets buiten Guns-territorie in Canada. Binnen 30 gedegen van verschillende locaties rapporteerden een ongeïdentificeerd vliegend object. De omvang was adembenemend. Sommigen vergeleken het met een voetbalveld met lichten die het nachtelijke landschap in een griezelijke gloed zetten. Het voertuig bewoog geruisloos en zweefde laag over wegen en meren. Gedegen beschreven een boomerang of V-vormige structuur die solide leek en de sterren volledig blokkeerde. Autoriteiten starten een onderzoek, maar vonden nooit een verklaring voor de waarneming. In 2003 deed zich in Wigan, Lancashire, een voorval voordat onderzoekers en bewoners verbijsterden. Een getuige beweerde 17 ruimtevaartuigen in V-formatie te hebben gezien. De objecten hadden een langwerpige vorm met vleugels in verschillende kleuren. Het meest schokkende detail was zijn verklaring buitenaardse wezens met groene huiden en cremekleurige buiken te hebben. Waar hij noemen op Menedocus 1779 in Frankrijk. Cousins zag in midden-Frankrijk. François, 13 jaar oud, en zijn 9-jarige zus Anne-Marie waren hun vee aan het hoeden terwijl een zacht briesje door de bomen bewoog. Plotseling verscheen iets ongewoons aan de horizon. François zag het eerst en dacht aanvankelijk dat het spelende kinderen waren. Bij nader inzien ontdekte hij 4 kleine wezens met zwarte huid en grote hoofden. En bovenop metalen vertrek met een koepel reflecteerde het zonlicht verblindend. De kinderen verstarden van schrik, terwijl de wezens zich rond het voertuig bewogen. Een van de figuren draaide zich om en keek naar hen, waarbij een hoog geluid werd geproduceerd. In een flits zweefden de wezens omhoog en verdwenen in de bol. Zonder geluid begon het voertuig te draaien en schoot de lucht in. Doodsbang renden François en Anne-Marie terug naar het dorp om te vertellen wat ze hadden gezien. Later ontdekte autoriteit een sterke, zwervelachtige geur op de vermeende landingsplaats. De openbaarmaking van deze documentatie door de Franse regering vond plaats in 2007, waardoor deze bijzondere getuigenverklaring officieel werd gedocumenteerd. Terwijl Norman Muscarello op een verlaten weg in Exeter liep, overviel een plotseling een onverklaarbaar tafereel. Een enorme, gloeiende, ovaalvormige UFO zweefde stil in de lucht. Doodsbang rende hij naar dichtstbijzijnde politiebureau, waar agent Eugene Bertrand door zijn oprechte angst werd overtuigd om terug te keren. Bij aankomst bevestigde Bertrand Muscarello's verhaal. Het vreemde object zweefde nog steeds boven het veld, geluidloos en dreigend. Plotseling bewoog het richting de patrouillewagen en overspoelde de teneur met een intens gloed. Zijn bewegingen waren grillig en verboven de mogelijkheden van enig bekend vliegtuig. Beiden keken ademloos toe het object uiteindelijk wegdreef en in de nacht verdween. De luchtmacht verwierp later deze waarneming en schreef het toe aan vliegtuiglichten of planetair verschijnselen. Een vergelijkbaar verhaal deed zich jaren eerder voor met Kenneth Arnold. Op 24 juni 1947 look hij over de Cascade Mountains met een heldere lucht, een perfect zicht. In de verte trokken metallichtige lichtflitsen zijn aandacht, 9 objecten die informatie vlogen en als spiegels in de zon schitterden. De objecten waren dun en schijfvormig, bewogen zich met verbazingwekkende snelheid, naar schatting 1200 km per uur. Zonder zichtbaar starten een voortstuwingssysteem en sprongen ze grillig door de lucht, als stenen die over water ketsen. Arnold probeerde hen te volgen, maar binnen seconden verdwenen ze achter een bergketen. Een intense verhaal ontvouwt zich ook aan de zijkant van een vaartuig, waar een luik openhing en een integer vol zwaailichten en mechanische geluiden zichtbaar werd. Pogingen tot communicatie bleven onbeantwoord, toen het vaartuig begon te draaien. Schoot een explosie van verzengende lucht uit de naaien. Ventileerd die Michele in de Bostrafon achteroverwierp. Onderzoekers ontdekten late stralingsresten op de landingsplaats, vergezeld van een aanzienlijke magnetische anomalie. On the afternoon of December 9th, 1965, a glowing object shot through the sky above Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, leaving a fiery trail behind it. Initially, some witnesses thought it was a meteor entering the atmosphere. Instead of breaking apart, the object seemed to maneuver before descending into a nearby forest. A few observers described it as having a peculiar shape, decorated with strange markings resembling hieroglyphs. Within hours, the area was sealed off by military personnel, raising suspicions among local residents. Soldiers prevented civilians from approaching, and some townspeople claimed they saw the object being loaded onto a military truck. The official statement said a meteor had crashed, but no one outside the authorities was allowed to see it. Arnold described his observation to reporters during the landing, comparing the movement to saucers, which led the press to coin the term flying saucers. This simple sentence sparked a worldwide fascination with UFOs. On November 2nd, 1957, the small town of Levelland, Texas, became the location of an extraordinary UFO event. It all began around 11 p.m. when 2 young men, Pedro Saucedo and Joe Salas, were driving along a dark highway. Suddenly, a brilliant object appeared above them, surrounded by a bluish glow. Saucedo slammed on the brakes when his truck's engine unexpectedly died. Stunned, they watched as the vehicle hovered above their truck. The moment it disappeared in the distance, the truck's engine started again as if nothing had happened. Other witnesses described a large object approaching their cars and causing electrical interference that shut down both engines and headlights. A later Air Force investigation concluded that witnesses had likely observed a combination of atmospheric phenomena. On February 4th, 1977, 14 children in the small Welsh village of Broadhaven ran into the fields behind their school during recess. Their playtime was abruptly interrupted by a bizarre sight. A long silver vehicle had landed nearby, dimly lit with a dome on top. The astonished children then witnessed something even more incredible. A humanoid figure. An extraordinary event unfolded at a Russian military base known as Kapustin Yar, the Soviet counterpart to Area 51. This site was dedicated to testing missiles and advanced technology under rigorous surveillance. Radar systems suddenly detected an unusual object moving at high speed across the sky. Operators quickly alerted officers, who dispatched a fighter jet to intercept the target. The pilot, following orders, approached the object and was stunned by what he witnessed. A massive metallic disc-shaped craft hovered before him, displaying remarkable agility with turns that defied physical logic. When ordered, the pilot opened fire, causing the craft to lose altitude and spiral downward. It crashed near the base, triggering an immediate military response. The wreckage, partially destroyed, revealed technology far beyond contemporary understanding. Leaked reports later suggested that small beings with large heads and dark eyes were found inside the craft. Standing near the ship was a figure that looked unusual, dressed in a form-fitting metal suit that moved slowly, as if mapping the environment. Initially, teachers dismissed the children's accounts, but as more children independently described identical details, the educators began to take the reports seriously. These UFO encounters and potential interactions with extraterrestrial beings raise profound questions. Are our modern technologies possibly derived from reverse engineering such mysterious crafts? Are we truly prepared for contact with beings from other worlds? Could our society handle the truth? Perhaps we're not alone in watching the sky. Maybe we've already been visited without realizing it. For many, UFO sightings and encounters with alien-like beings suggest this tantalizing possibility. We conclude this fascinating journey through UFO history, acknowledging that unexpected revelations about our future might still be waiting to unfold. On the night of November 12, 1976, at Talavera La Real Air Base in Spain, 3 soldiers were patrolling with a German Shepherd. The country was tense, gripped by political instability and security concerns. Their routine quickly turned extraordinary. A noise like static interference erupted, followed by a sharp, high-pitched beep. A light entered the base perimeter, triggering the soldiers' immediate suspicion of a terrorist attack. Suddenly, something truly bizarre occurred. Branches snapped, and a towering humanoid figure appeared, emitting a soft green glow. One witness described it wearing a tight metallic suit with a black helmet. The military dog attempted to approach but encountered an invisible barrier blocking its path. In a shocking moment, the being made a sudden movement, causing one soldier to collapse. His fellow troops responded by firing hundreds of rounds at the mysterious entity. Unexpectedly, its glow intensified before vanishing completely. The aftermath was chilling. 3 military witnesses fell into comas, and 1 later developed neurodegenerative diseases. Years later, in 2016, Spain's Ministry of Defense declassified this case, along with numerous other files. Soviet authorities were no strangers to such mysterious incidents. At Kapustin, a military base established in 1946 for missile and rocket testing, they reportedly secured and examined wreckage and potential occupants, attempting to replicate unknown technology. However, no official documentation confirms these claims. Similar unexplained encounters occurred elsewhere. On January 20th, 1996, in Varginha, Brazil, a cloudy morning during the rainy season became unforgettable for 3 women aged 14 to 22. While walking through an open field, they spotted a strange creature with brown skin and red eyes. The being was small, with an oversized head and forehead protrusions. Terrified, the women fled, reporting their encounter to their families. Local authorities quickly sealed the area. Witnesses claimed to have seen Brazilian military vehicles transporting an unidentified object, and rumors spread about additional creatures being captured in the city. These incidents remain shrouded in mystery, challenging our understanding of the known world. The aquatic humanoids of Lake Baikal in the summer of 1982. Something extraordinary occurred during a Soviet military diving exercise in Lake Baikal. Deep underwater, the divers encountered towering humanoid beings that defied explanation. These figures, nearly 10 feet tall, wore tight-fitting silver suits with black helmet-like spheres covering their heads. Moving with incredible grace through the frigid waters, the humanoids seemed completely at home in their environment. The divers, amazed by the sight, attempted to get closer. After reporting their incredible sighting to superiors, a commanding officer ordered the capture of one of these beings. Suddenly, an invisible force pushed the divers back, violently propelling them toward the surface. The consequences were devastating. 3 military personnel lost their lives, and 4 others survived with serious after-effects. The incident was immediately hushed up, but rumors began to spread among soldiers and scientists. Speculation grew about possible underwater alien bases within the lake, Local residents spoke of glowing silver discs plunging into or emerging from the water with a thunderous roar. Some theories suggested these entities might have coexisted with humans for millennia or potentially predated human existence on Earth. Talk of an injured being taken to a medical facility under heavy security quickly spread. Media coverage intensified and fear gripped the public. The Brazilian government denied any contact with extraterrestrial beings, attributing the panic to a misunderstanding. The Zimbabwe encounter on September 16, 1994. An extraordinary event unfolded in the quiet rural countryside near Ruwa, southeast of Harare. At Ariel School, the typical calm of a school day was about to be shattered. Children playing in the schoolyard suddenly witnessed a metallic craft emerging from the clouds. It descended smoothly, settling in a nearby wooded area. Frozen in place, the children watched as several small humanoid figures stepped out of the craft. These beings had large, dark eyes and slightly elongated heads. They moved across the terrain while the children stood transfixed, witnessing something beyond their comprehension. The extraordinary encounter would become a significant moment in unexplained phenomenon documentation. U.S. Navy pilots had captured footage that defied conventional aeronautical understanding, sparking a global debate. The first video, FLIR, was recorded in November 2004 by a pilot from the USS Nimitz. An oval-shaped dark object hovered in the sky with no visible means of propulsion. The infrared sensors detected something extraordinary. It moved at incredible speed, accelerating rapidly and making abrupt turns. The astonished pilot commented on its velocity and erratic behavior. Gimbal. The second video from January 2015 depicted a saucer-shaped object gliding smoothly. Pilots watched in disbelief as it rotated on its axis. Their voices reflected confusion over what they were witnessing. Despite strong winds, the object remained stable, maneuvering with ease. The third video, Gelfast, also from January 2015, captured a UFO moving swiftly over the ocean. Small and elongated, it skimmed over the water at a steady pace. Pilots attempted to track it, but its speed made it difficult to keep within view. The absence of a propulsion trail made the sighting even more perplexing. The Pentagon confirmed the footage's authenticity, but refrained from commenting on the object's nature. Experts noted that the maneuvers displayed exceeded the known capabilities of any human-made aircraft. The Voronezh craft and beings on September 27, 1989, a cool breeze swept through Voronezh, south of Moscow. Children played in a local park when a glowing object suddenly appeared in the sky, emitting a reddish light that caught everyone's attention. An oval-shaped craft with a metallic sheen slowly descended to the ground. Children and adults watched in awe as a hatch on the ship began to open. One being approached, gazing intently and conveying a silent message. The children described feeling a telepathic connection, receiving a warning about the planet's future. Just as suddenly as they arrived, the beings returned to their craft and vanished into the sky. Local authorities were notified, though few took the children's words seriously. However, their accounts were so consistent that researchers from around the world grew interested. The children were interviewed multiple times, yet their stories remained unchanged. No, the Apache Sitgreaves forests of Arizona bore witness to an extraordinary event on November 5, 1975. Travis Walton, a young logger, and his crew were heading home after a long day's work, traveling along a forest road in their pickup truck. Suddenly, a brilliant light cut through the darkness. The men halted their vehicle, transfixed by a disc-shaped craft hovering among the trees. It emitted a soft, steady hum, its lights flickering in a hypnotic pattern, drawn by a mix of curiosity and awe. Walton stepped out of the truck. A beam of light shot from the craft, striking Walton and hurling him through the air. His horrified companions watched his body crash to the ground, motionless, as the craft began to ascend. Overcome with fear, the crew fled at full speed, leaving Walton behind. Minutes later, guilt and dread compelled them to return, but both Travis and the craft had vanished. His disappearance triggered a massive search effort, with rescue teams combing the area. Days passed with no sign of him, and rumors of his death or abduction spread throughout the small town of Snowflake. Walton's co-workers underwent lie detector tests, which yielded mixed results, though their accounts remained largely credible. Then, on November 10th, 5 days after his disappearance, Travis Walton reappeared disoriented at a gas station miles from where he had last been seen. He described waking up in a brightly lit room, surrounded by short humanoid beings with large eyes, bald heads, and pale skin. From within the craft, peculiar-looking beings emerged, accompanied by a small robot. These humanoid figures stood nearly 10 feet tall, with small heads and piercing gazes. One of them raised an arm, and a beam of light engulfed the witnesses, paralyzing them in place. The atmosphere became charged with an unexplainable energy, as if time itself had come to a halt. After what felt like an eternity, the beings retreated into their craft. The hatch sealed shut, and the ship soared into the sky, vanishing in an instant. Reports from the time indicated that investigators discovered unusual brown markings, suggesting a heavy object had landed. Additionally, abnormally high levels of radiation were detected in the area. In the depths of Rendlesham Forest, England, on December 26, 1980, U.S. Air Force soldiers stationed at Woodbridge Air Base encountered something extraordinary. During the night, strange lights moved silently between trees, catching the soldiers' attention. Deployed in the Cold War era at Bentwaters and Woodbridge bases, these soldiers ventured into the dark forest to investigate. What they discovered was astonishing. A triangular craft with a metallic sheen hovering just above the ground. Pulsating, multicolored lights cast an otherworldly glow across the surroundings, and the air felt charged with static electricity. Sergeant Jim Peniston approached the craft and touched its surface, noticing intricate inscriptions carved into the metal. After a few minutes, the object slowly ascended and vanished into the night sky. The next day, a military team examined the landing site. They found 3 triangular impressions where the craft had rested, along with damaged trees and abnormal radiation levels. Despite these findings, British and American military authorities dismissed the event as misidentified stars or the nearby Orford Ness Lighthouse. In a similar vein, Brazil experienced its own unsettling UFO encounters. In 1977, on Colares Island, at the mouth of the Amazon River, a terrifying series of events unfolded. Unknown lights, described as color-changing spheres, began flying low over houses. These weren't mere sightings. The lights actively pursued people, firing beams that caused burns, dizziness, and exhaustion. Nightly attacks forced residents to stay indoors after sunset, with some sleeping in groups or arming themselves. The Brazilian Air Force launched Operação Prato, sending personnel with cameras, radar systems, and weapons to investigate. Their mission: to uncover the truth behind these mysterious lights. One individual's experience was particularly disturbing. A human figure in a helmet moved him to another location, where 3 people placed a mask over his mouth, causing unconsciousness. His next memory was walking along a highway, confused with a UFO hovering above. Weeks passed as witnesses observed the inexplicable firsthand. Strange lights performed impossible maneuvers, directing beams at civilians. Military officers carefully documented the phenomenon through photographs and testimonies, yet remained unable to determine its true origin. Eventually, these mysterious lights stopped harassing the island's inhabitants. An official report was quickly classified, remaining a secret for many years. Only decades later would portions of Operação Prato's files be declassified. Captain Woorage Hollander provided a critical first-hand account. He had personally witnessed luminous objects executing maneuvers that suggested intelligent control. In 1803, off Japan's Hitachi coast, fishermen encountered something extraordinary. They discovered a mysterious vessel floating in the sea, a circular craft they named Utsuro Bun, meaning hollow ship. This vessel featured glass windows and metallic panels. A woman sat inside, dressed in unusual clothing and tightly holding a box she wouldn't let anyone touch. When the fishermen attempted communication, they found she spoke no Japanese. While some historians consider this story local folklore, ufologists argue it might represent an actual extraterrestrial encounter. Near Scotland's Calvine town in August 1990, 2 hikers experienced something remarkable. A massive, diamond-shaped craft hovered silently in the sky. They quickly captured several photographs, stunned by what they were witnessing. A military jet suddenly appeared, approaching the scene. The craft remained motionless briefly before ascending rapidly and vanishing completely. The men shared their photographs with a local newspaper, which then forwarded them to the Ministry of Defense. These images remained classified for years. In 2022, one photograph was finally unveiled, revealing extraordinary details. Experts have described these as the clearest and most credible UFO photographs ever taken. Craig Lindsay provided an authentic copy of the original photo, which the UK Ministry of Defence had analysed in 1990. Critically, no evidence of tampering was found in either the photograph or the print. The incident in Peru would prove equally intriguing, adding another layer to this complex narrative of unexplained aerial phenomena. At Peru's La Joya Air Base, an extraordinary event unfolded involving a UFO that caught the attention of nearly 1,800 witnesses. The spherical craft hung motionless in the sky, prompting the commanding officer to take swift action. Oscar Santa Maria, the pilot tasked with investigating, was ordered to intercept what was believed to be espionage technology. As he approached, he encountered a peculiar object, a round silver craft with a transparent dome on top, conspicuously lacking windows or any visible means of propulsion. The pilot's initial response was to fire 64 rounds at the mysterious object. Despite what he believed were direct hits, the craft showed no signs of damage. Instead, the UFO displayed mind-boggling maneuverability, shifting directions and altitude with incredible speed and agility that far outpaced the fighter jet. For 22 minutes, Santa Maria attempted to chase the object. Suddenly, it accelerated upward and vanished into the sky, leaving behind a perplexing encounter that remains one of the rare instances of a human pilot engaging a UFO. Washington, D.C. experienced its own bizarre UFO encounters during 2 consecutive weekends that would shock the nation. On July 19, 1952, clear skies became the backdrop for an inexplicable phenomenon. Radar screens at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base began detecting multiple unidentified objects moving with erratic, astonishing speeds. Air traffic controllers found themselves baffled, unable to establish contact with these mysterious visitors. Commercial pilots reported witnessing lights performing extraordinary maneuvers, and panic began to spread as media coverage intensified. The city seemed under some form of extraterrestrial surveillance. The incidents repeated on July 26th, with even more numerous sightings. The Air Force responded by scrambling 2 F-94 Starfire jets to intercept. Pilots witnessed flashing lights, but each time they attempted to close in, the UFOs would dart away at incredible speeds. To quell public anxiety, the Air Force held a press conference on July 29. General John Samford, Director of Intelligence, attempted to calm nerves by explaining the radar-detected objects as mere pranks, misidentified aircraft, or electrical phenomena. In July 1947, an incident would further fuel the growing fascination with unidentified flying objects. The legendary Roswell event that would capture the world's imagination, known the New Mexico plains, a peculiar incident unfolded that would become legendary in UFO history. Rancher Mac Brazel discovered something extraordinary on his property near Corona wreckage, unlike anything he had ever seen before. The unusual debris included metallic sheets, rubber strips, and small fragments that seemed out of place. Brazel's curiosity led him to take some pieces to the local sheriff's office, which then contacted the nearby Army Air Base. Major Jesse Marcel, an intelligence officer, was sent to investigate the site. On July 8, 1947, a startling military press release announced the recovery of a flying saucer. Yet, remarkably, the narrative shifted dramatically the very next day, with officials now claiming the wreckage was simply from a weather balloon. Marcel later displayed some debris to the press, which appeared ordinary and lacking any extraordinary characteristics. For years, the Roswell incident seemed to fade from public consciousness. That changed in 1978 when researcher Stanton Friedman interviewed Marcel. The military officer claimed the debris was alien and suggested a government cover-up. He described a metallic sheet that could crumple easily, but would return to its original shape when released. Marcel's son, Jesse Jr., would later corroborate his father's account, stating he had been shown extraterrestrial wreckage, including a piece with strange symbols. By the 1980s, new witnesses emerged with even more sensational claims. Glenn Dennis, a Roswell mortuary employee, reported that the military had inquired about small, airtight coffins. Additional witnesses in the 1990s alleged they had seen alien bodies in military hangars and trucks. Official investigations continued. In 1994, the USS Chaos, ETBEA, Air Force released a report attributing the wreckage to Project Mogul, a classified balloon program. By 1997, A subsequent report dismissed claims of alien bodies, explaining that witnesses had actually seen test dummies used in parachute experiments. The story might have ended there, but other incidents kept the mystery alive, like the Lonnie Zamora case. On April 24, 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico, a police officer encountered something extraordinary while on patrol. A sudden, deafening roar and bright flash in the sky caught Zamora's attention. Believing it might be an explosion, he drove toward the sound into a remote desert area. What he saw defied explanation. A metallic, egg-shaped craft resting on the ground, with two small humanoid figures in gleaming suits nearby. Before Zamora could fully comprehend the scene, the beings hurried into the craft and vanished, leaving behind nothing but questions and wonder. Nothing a thunderous blast erupted as the craft began to ascend. A blue flame shot from its underside before it accelerated and vanished from sight. The Pascagoula abduction chronicles a remarkable event on October 11, 1973, in the quiet Mississippi town. Two shipyard workers, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, were fishing along the Pascagoula River on a clear night when their ordinary evening took an extraordinary turn. Suddenly, a brilliant blue light appeared in the sky, speeding toward them. An oval-shaped craft descended and hovered silently above the water nearby. Before they could comprehend what was happening, a hatch opened, revealing three unusual entities. These beings stood about 5 feet tall, with grayish skin and elongated limbs ending in claw-like hands. Their heads were bizarre, lacking visible eyes, instead featuring 3 long cone-shaped protrusions where ears and a nose would normally be. Hickson and Parker found themselves completely paralyzed, unable to resist as the entities carried them inside the craft. Once aboard, they were separated and subjected to what seemed like medical examinations. Hickson described being scanned by a floating eye-like device that swept a light over his body. Parker, overwhelmed and in shock, recalled fewer details. After what felt like an eternity, they were returned to the dock and released. The craft swiftly ascended and vanished. Initially skeptical, authorities were convinced by the raw emotion in their accounts. Both men later underwent a polygraph test, which suggested they were telling the truth. Investigators from the Air Force and Project Blue Book examined the site, yet they failed to provide a definitive explanation. While the incident remains unexplained, the men's consistent and emotional testimonies suggest something truly extraordinary occurred that night along the Pascagoula River. Known a dark September night in 1961 unfolded a chilling tale of Barney and Betty Hill's unexpected encounter on a deserted highway through the White Mountains. While driving home to Portsmouth after a vacation in Canada, they noticed a strange light in the sky that seemed to follow their car, growing larger and moving unpredictably. Barney pulled over, grabbed his binoculars, and stepped out to investigate. A massive disc-shaped craft hovered at a low altitude, causing an overwhelming sense of fear. He sprinted back to the car, pressing down on the gas, but the light descended, forcing them to stop. The enormous craft, spanning about 100 feet, floated directly in front of them. Through his binoculars, Barney saw several windows with humanoid figures inside. Upon arriving home, the Hills discovered peculiar details. Their watches had stopped, binocular straps were broken, and Betty's dress was torn. Seeking understanding, they consulted Dr. Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist specializing in regression hypnosis. Under hypnosis, Betty recalled seeing a map she believed depicted interstellar travel routes. Years later, researchers suggested it matched the Zeta Reticuli star system. She also described a physical examination involving a needle inserted into her abdomen. Barney recounted seeing humanoid beings with large heads and oversized eyes. The encounter at Cisco Grove on September 4, 1964, began with a similarly unsettling scene. Skeptical men followed someone outside, only to witness something that sent chills down their spines. Small figures emerged from the darkness. These creatures stood about 3 feet tall, characterized by pointed ears, glowing eyes, and elongated arms. They slowly advanced toward the house. Terrified, the men grabbed rifles and fired, but bullets seemed to bounce off the entities as if they were shielded. The family retreated indoors, barricading doors and windows while the beings attempted to enter. For hours, they remained trapped, listening to footsteps and scratching sounds on the roof and walls. Eventually, the entities slipped away into the night. When police arrived, they found no sign of the intruders, only strange ground markings, and evidence of the family's frantic attempt to defend themselves. Nor, deep in the forests near Cisco Grove, a terrifying night awaited a young hunter. Donald Shrum had ventured into the woods seeking deer, but as dusk settled, he quickly realized he was lost. With darkness closing in, he climbed a tall tree for safety from potential predators. While perched on a sturdy branch, something extraordinary caught his attention, a distant light slowly moving toward him. What he initially thought was a helicopter soon revealed itself as a metallic, disc-shaped craft. Suddenly, humanoid figures emerged beneath his tree. They were small and thin, with eerie red eyes. A towering robotic figure accompanied them, its eyes glowing ominously. As the beings attempted to climb up, Shrum grew desperate. He ignited flares to ward them off, but they remained undaunted. One of the entities raised a strange tube, releasing a gas that made him feel dizzy. Terrified, Shrum fired every remaining flare and shot arrows from his bow. His attacks seemed to have no effect. For hours, the humanoids persistently tried to reach him while he fought to stay conscious. Just before dawn, they withdrew, and the craft vanished into the sky. Exhausted and shaken, Shrum eventually climbed down and was found by his hunting party. In another mysterious encounter, the Oakley Moor incident unfolded on a cold December morning in 1987. Philip Spencer, a former police officer and amateur photographer, was walking across the desolate Yorkshire moors when movement caught his eye. A small humanoid figure was moving swiftly in the distance. Spencer raised his camera and captured a photograph. The figure appeared to be moving toward a metallic, disc-shaped object hovering just above the ground and emitting a faint humming sound. Moments later, the craft disappeared into the mist. Strangely, Spencer discovered his watch had jumped ahead by 2 hours. Though blurry, his photograph seemed to show a small humanoid with elongated arms and an oversized head. Skeptics have suggested the figure could be a person or animal, but no definitive explanation exists. On May 10, 1978, another bizarre event occurred in the small Polish village of Emilsin. On a sunny day, Jan Wolski experienced something inexplicable that would challenge his understanding of reality. Nort, a farmer, was quietly traveling home along a forest path in his horse-drawn cart when he noticed two strange figures walking beside him. These beings were short and humanoid, wearing tight-fitting suits with greenish skin. They observed him calmly and silently, radiating an unusual sense of peace. Wolski continued his journey without showing fear as the entities climbed onto his cart wordlessly. Suddenly, a large, silver, oval-shaped craft appeared, hovering over a forest clearing. The beings guided him toward the object, where a platform lifted him inside. The interior was a smooth, dimly lit space where they conducted an examination using advanced instruments. After finishing their assessment, they gently escorted him back to the ground. Before departing, the beings made a subtle farewell gesture as their craft ascended and smoothly disappeared into the sky. Strange ground imprints were later discovered at the site. Local authorities investigated the incident, and Wolski underwent extensive psychological evaluations. Experts unanimously concluded he was an honest man showing no signs of mental instability or deception. On March 13, 1997, something extraordinary unfolded beneath the clear skies of Phoenix, Arizona. A formation of amber-colored lights appeared, stretching across the sky in a massive V-shape. Moving in complete silence, they defied explanation. Witnesses offered different descriptions. Some saw separate glowing orbs, while others perceived a single enormous craft. Reports poured in from across Phoenix, with countless residents claiming to have witnessed the mysterious display. Police stations, Luke Air Force Base, and local news outlets were overwhelmed with incoming calls. Initially, military officials denied any knowledge of the phenomenon, causing public confusion. Days later, Arizona Governor Fife Symington held a press conference featuring someone dressed as an alien, seemingly attempting to trivialize the event. Years afterward, he admitted personally seeing the lights and described the incident as otherworldly. The Air Force eventually explained the glowing objects as flares dropped during a military exercise. Now, on September 19, 1976, an extraordinary event unfolded over Tehran that left military officials completely bewildered. Citizens began reporting an unusual light in the night sky, with the object displaying remarkable characteristics. It moved at extraordinary speeds and shifted colors in ways that defied explanation. The Imperial Iranian Air Force responded by sending an F-4 Phantom II fighter jet to investigate. As the pilot approached the luminous anomaly, he was stunned by its erratic behavior. The object accelerated rapidly and changed direction with an impossible precision that no conventional aircraft could match. Suddenly, the F-4's systems failed completely, instruments went dark, and radio communications were lost. The pilot had no choice but to turn back, and remarkably the aircraft's systems mysteriously returned to normal once he did so. A second F-4 was quickly launched to continue the investigation. This pilot encountered an even more alarming situation. As he neared the object, it emitted a beam of light that moved directly toward him. Panicked, he attempted to fire a missile in self-defense, but every system on the jet simultaneously malfunctioned. In a separate incident related to UFO sightings, the Ubatuba crash of September 1957 presented another puzzling scenario. On a sunny afternoon, local fishermen on a Brazilian beach witnessed a dramatic event. A disc-shaped craft appeared in the sky, descending at an incredible speed before exploding in a blinding flash just before reaching the water. The fishermen watched in shock as the UFO shattered into thousands of fragments over the sea and shoreline. Rushing to the impact site, they discovered small metallic pieces scattered along the sand. The material was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. One of the fishermen collected a few fragments and eventually sent them to a journalist in Sao Paulo. Laboratory analysis yielded astonishing results. Tests confirmed that the debris was composed of magnesium with an exceptionally high level of purity. Despite numerous investigations over the years, no definitive explanation has ever been reached about what truly occurred on that day in Ubatuba. The incident remains an enduring mystery, with the strange metallic fragments serving as the only tangible evidence of this extraordinary event. The Iranian UFO encounter at an undisclosed location. Iranian pilots were suddenly confronted with an extraordinary aerial event. Small lights began circling an F-4 aircraft, moving with independent trajectories. Without warning, the unidentified craft and its companion lights executed a rapid ascent, completely vanishing from the area and leaving the pilots unable to give chase. Following the incident, detailed reports were carefully drafted and formally communicated to USS authorities. The Valençol UFO incident. On a bright morning of July 1, 1965, Maurice Mas, a serious farmer deeply connected to his land, was tending his fields in the French countryside. A sharp buzzing sound suddenly disrupted the peaceful silence. Looking up, Massey was stunned by a metallic, grey, oval-shaped craft gently descending on four slender legs. As he cautiously approached, a small door silently slid open. Two beings emerged, each approximately 3 feet tall, with oversized heads and slender bodies wearing tight-fitting suits. Their large eyes seemed almost hypnotically calm. One being raised a small device, pointing it at Massey and instantly overwhelming him with profound drowsiness. Though physically paralyzed, Massey remained fully conscious, watching the entities methodically inspect the field around their craft with precise, deliberate movements. After what felt like mere minutes, they returned to their ship and lifted off, emitting the same buzzing sound before vanishing at incredible speed. Subsequent investigations by the National Gendarmerie and aerial phenomena specialists revealed unusual ground markings suggesting extreme heat exposure. Years later, the vegetation slowly recovered, though the lavender plants never regained their original vitality. The disappearance of Frederick Valentich on October 21, 1978. Young pilot Frederick Valentich took off from Melbourne his Cessna 182L. While flying over the Bass Strait, an unexpected light caught his attention. Contacting air traffic control, he reported an approaching unidentified object. Valentich described a large, elongated craft without wings or visible engines, featuring glowing green lights. Despite controllers confirming no other aircraft in the area, he insisted the object was toying with him, hovering directly overhead and mimicking his every movement. Shortly thereafter, the communication took an ominous turn as Valentich's description became increasingly distressed. The vanishing pilot and airplane mysteriously disappeared from radar as if swallowed by the sea. No trace of the plane or its pilot was ever found. His final transmission cut off abruptly, leaving behind an enduring mystery about what Valentich truly witnessed in his last moments. The beings of Kofu and the quiet Japanese city of Kofu, two 7-year-old boys, Masato Kawano and Katsuhiro Yamahata, were playing in a field near their homes on February 23, 1975. Their ordinary day took an extraordinary turn when a glowing object gradually descended from the sky and settled in a nearby vineyard. The craft was disc-shaped with a dome emitting a pulsating orange light. Driven by curiosity and awe, the boys raced toward the mysterious object. What they encountered was beyond their wildest imagination. Two small beings emerged from the craft. These entities were short with brownish skin, large heads, and elongated features. Their awkward movements and bizarre appearance led the boys to describe them as demons. One being held a strange device that projected a light beam, seemingly paralyzing the children. When a creature touched Katsuhiro's shoulder, he found himself momentarily frozen. As quickly as they appeared, the beings returned to their craft and ascended swiftly, vanishing into the sky, leaving the boys bewildered and terrified. The Cash Landrum incident on a December evening in 1980, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and Vicky's grandson Colby were returning home after a pleasant dinner. Driving through a dense pine forest, they encountered an unexpected phenomenon, a bright glow in the sky. Pulling over, they witnessed a massive diamond-shaped object descending at a low altitude. The craft emitted intense flames toward the ground, creating a deafening roar. Betty attempted to get a closer view but was forced back by the extreme heat. Suddenly, nearly 20 helicopters arrived on the scene. As the UFO ascended, the aircraft pursued it until both disappeared into the distance. The encounter was far from over. In the following days, Betty, Vicky, and Colby developed severe symptoms: skin burns, nausea, and hair loss, a testament to the mysterious and potentially harmful nature of their experience. The mysterious Koayami incident in the Chihuahua Desert of Mexico on August 25, 1974, an enigmatic event unfolded that would remain unexplained. That night, Mexican military radar detected an unidentified object streaking through the country's airspace at an incredible speed, seemingly out of control and heading toward the mountainous region near Cayame, a small desert town. Simultaneously, a civilian aircraft departed from El Paso, Texas, on a southbound flight. Shortly after takeoff, air traffic controllers abruptly lost contact with both the unidentified object and the civilian plane. At sunrise, search teams made a startling discovery. Beside the wreckage of the civilian aircraft lay a metallic, disc-shaped craft partially embedded in the ground. Despite showing signs of a high-speed impact, the craft's structure remained remarkably intact. Mexican military forces quickly secured the area, establishing a perimeter to examine the wreckage. They found the craft was composed of an unknown material, prompting plans to transport it to a T military facility for further study. However, before they could proceed, unmarked helicopters suddenly descended onto the site. Men in military-style uniforms, lacking any visible insignia, swiftly took control of the operation. The Mexican team was replaced, and both the craft and the downed aircraft were discreetly transported away. The incident was reported to authorities, yet the Air Force denied any involvement or knowledge of the helicopters. The Mexican government never provided an official explanation. Speculation emerged that U.S. forces intervened to recover the craft, fearing it contained extraterrestrial technology. Some mysteries, it seems, are destined to remain just that, mysteries. The first microston, Renato Nicolai, was working in his field in southeastern France on a cold January afternoon when a sharp buzzing sound broke the silence. Looking up, he saw a metallic, disc-shaped craft descending toward the ground. The object touched down quietly in a clear area, remaining briefly on the surface before rapidly ascending and vanishing into the darkness. Stunned, Nikolai approached the landing site. He discovered two concentric rings imprinted on the soil, which appeared scorched and exposed to intense heat. Nearby plants looked withered. Concerned, he reported the incident to authorities, who quickly arrived to investigate. France's study group on unidentified aerospace phenomena took the case seriously. Their analysis confirmed the soil had been subjected to extreme pressure. Physical and chemical anomalies in the vegetation suggested possible exposure to electromagnetic radiation. On January 7, 1948, Captain Thomas Mantell was piloting his P-51 Mustang over Kentucky during what seemed like a routine flight. An emergency call from Godman Air Force Base suddenly reported an unidentified flying object. Witnesses described it as enormous and metallic, hovering high in the sky. Without hesitation, Mantell was ordered to intercept the mysterious craft. As he approached, he reported seeing a massive, shining silver disc. Something went wrong during his ascent. He began losing control of his aircraft. Years earlier, 4 individuals experienced a profound encounter that would haunt them for decades. A blinding light engulfed their canoe, and in an instant, everything went black. They had no recollection of how they reached land or how much time had passed. Their abandoned campfire was reduced to embers, suggesting far more time had elapsed than they remembered. Over the years, each began experiencing recurring nightmares tied to that night. In their dreams, they recalled being taken aboard a craft and subjected to medical examinations by humanoid beings. In 1988, the 4 finally sought professional help, undergoing regression hypnosis to relive the missing moments. Their recollections were strikingly detailed, describing examination rooms, advanced instruments, and emotionless beings with large black eyes observing them in silence. On the night of December 11, 1996, something extraordinary unfolded in the skies over the Yukon Territory, Canada. Nearly 30 witnesses from different locations reported a sighting that would become legendary. The unidentified flying object was massive. Some compared its size to a football field. With lights that bathed the night landscape in an eerie glow, it moved silently at low altitude over roads and lakes. Witnesses described the craft as having a boomerang or V shape, appearing solid and completely blocking out the stars as it passed overhead. Despite an official investigation, authorities never found an explanation for this remarkable event. In 2003, another intriguing incident occurred in Wigan, Lancashire. A declassified report from the UK Ministry of Defence revealed a stunning account. One witness claimed to have seen 17 spacecraft flying in a V-shaped formation. These objects were oblong with wings and varying colors. The most astonishing detail came when the witness reported seeing extraterrestrial beings with green skin and cream-colored bellies. Another remarkable UFO report made public by the French government in 2007 involved a close encounter in Cossack. On August 29, 1967, 13-year-old Francois and his 9-year-old sister Anne-Marie were tending cattle in this small central French village. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and everything was peaceful until they noticed something unusual on the horizon. Francois spotted 4 small beings with black skin and oversized heads, initially mistaking them for children playing. As he got a better look, he realized these were no ordinary figures. The siblings watched in shock as the creatures moved around a floating metallic craft. Spherical with a dome on top, it reflected sunlight with an almost blinding glare. Frozen in fear, Francois and Anne-Marie stood still as one of the beings turned to look at them and emitted a high-pitched sound. In a separate incident involving Thomas Mantell, it is believed that at such a high altitude he may have suffered from oxygen deprivation, causing him to lose consciousness. At 25,000 feet, his aircraft became unstable and entered a steep dive. The plane crashed into an open field, killing Mantell instantly. The true cause of the incident remains unknown. Some claim it was a weather balloon, while others insist it was a genuine UFO, the colossal craft of Corbridge. A night sky mystery on February 28, 1999, along a road in Corbridge, United Kingdom. Witnesses reported an extraordinary event. An enormous object dominated the night sky, described as a craft the size of 10 football fields with a distinct arrowhead shape. Its sheer scale and unusual form made this sighting particularly remarkable. In an instant, figures floated up and vanished into a hovering sphere. Without making a sound, the craft began to spin and then shot upward into the sky. Terrified, the children sprinted back to the village to report what had happened. Later, authorities investigating the scene detected a strong sulfur-like odor at the spot where the craft had allegedly landed. The Falcon Lake UFOs, a transformative encounter on a crisp morning of May 20, 1967, Stefan Misalak, an amateur geologist and nature enthusiast, set out to explore the shores of Falcon Lake, Canada, in search of minerals. While examining rock formations, an unusual high-pitched beeping sound broke the silence. Looking up, he witnessed 2 disc-shaped objects descending toward a clearing. One landed smoothly on the rocky surface, while the other hovered briefly before flying away. Believing it to be an experimental aircraft, Michalek cautiously approached, feeling an intense heat radiating from the craft. Suddenly a hatch opened, revealing an interior filled with flashing lights and mechanical sounds. As Michalek moved closer and attempted to communicate, no response came. The craft began rotating, and a blast of scorching air erupted from a vent, striking him in the chest and throwing him backward. Investigators later detected traces of radiation at the landing site, along with a significant magnetic anomaly. The Exeter incident, a terrifying nighttime encounter in the early hours of September 3, 1965, 18-year-old Norman Mascarello was walking home along a deserted road in the small town of Exeter, United States. Suddenly, he spotted a massive, glowing, oval-shaped UFO silently hovering. Terrified, Mascarello sprinted to the nearest police station to seek help. His genuine fear and serious demeanor convinced Officer Eugene Bertrand to accompany him back to the site. Astonishingly, upon arrival, the officer also witnessed the unexplained phenomenon. UFO encounters have long captivated the human imagination, with several notable incidents standing out in history. One such event occurred when witnesses saw a craft hovering silently over a field, its presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. The object moved closer to a patrol car, bathing the vehicle's interior in an intense glow. Its movements defied explanation, performing aerial maneuvers impossible for known aircraft. Gripped by fear, the witnesses watched as the craft eventually drifted away into the night. Military authorities later dismissed the sighting, attributing it to mundane explanations like commercial aircraft lights or planetary reflections. In the Cascade Mountains of Washington on June 24, 1947, Private pilot Kenneth Arnold experienced a remarkable encounter. The clear sky offered perfect visibility when Arnold spotted 9 unusual objects. These thin, disc-shaped craft reflected sunlight like mirrors, moving at an incredible speed of around 1,700 miles per hour. The objects moved erratically, skipping like stones across water, without visible propulsion systems or tails. Arnold attempted to follow them, but they quickly vanished behind a mountain range. His description to reporters, comparing their motion to saucers, led to the now famous term flying saucers and sparked global fascination with UFOs. Another significant incident occurred on December 9, 1965, in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. A glowing object streaked across the sky, initially mistaken for a meteorite. Instead of burning up, it maneuvered and descended into a nearby forest. Witnesses described a bell-shaped object with strange hieroglyphic-like markings. Military personnel quickly sealed the area, blocking civilians from approaching. Some townspeople claimed to have seen the object loaded onto a military truck. The official explanation cited a meteor crash, but the strict secrecy only fueled speculation. On November 2, 1957, the small Texas town of Llewellyn became the center of another extraordinary UFO event, adding to the growing catalog of unexplained aerial phenomena that continue to intrigue and mystify people worldwide. It all started with an unexpected encounter on a dark highway late one night. Pedro Saucedo and Joe Salaz were driving when a radiant object with a bluish glow suddenly appeared above them. Saucedo's truck engine inexplicably shut off as they watched the craft hovering directly over their vehicle. Just as quickly as it appeared, the object vanished into the distance, and the truck's engine restarted as if nothing unusual had occurred. Other witnesses reported similar experiences, describing large objects approaching their vehicles and causing electrical failures that switched off both engines and headlights. Later, the Air Force investigation suggested these sightings were likely the result of atmospheric phenomena. In another intriguing incident, the small Welsh village of Broadhaven became the center of an extraordinary event. On February 4, 1977, during school recess, 14 children rushed into the nearby fields and encountered something remarkable. An elongated silver craft with a dome had landed close by. What happened next was even more astonishing. A humanoid figure stood near the vessel, wearing a form-fitting metallic suit and moving slowly as if carefully examining the surroundings. Initially, teachers dismissed the children's accounts. However, as more students independently provided consistent details about what they had seen, the reports began to be taken seriously. For most of human history, the possibility of extraterrestrial life was merely a topic of speculation found in myths, religions, and science fiction. Something shifted in recent years. A small group of individuals started challenging existing narratives, suggesting there might be more to these encounters than previously believed. Governments, long accused of concealing information, gradually began revealing glimpses of hidden knowledge. High-ranking officials, decorated military pilots, and intelligence insiders started stepping forward, sharing accounts that went beyond simple observations of lights in the sky. These developments have led us to confront profound questions. Could some of our modern technologies originate from reverse engineering mysterious crafts? Are we truly prepared for potential contact with beings from other worlds? Would our society be capable of handling the truth? As we conclude this exploration of UFO encounters and potential extraterrestrial interactions, one thing becomes clear: the phenomenon continues to hold unexpected surprises for our future, and decades of secrecy and stigma surrounding UFO encounters are now unraveling. Each leaked document, each declassified statement from those within the system reveals a truth that has long been hidden. The possibilities seem limited. Some argue these are simply misidentified natural phenomena, with countless pilots and military personnel reporting strange sightings. Others suggest this represents mind-blowingly advanced technology, so sophisticated that no one claims ownership. A third option remains tantalizingly unexplored. What if everything we've been told is wrong? What if we're standing on the edge of a reality far larger than our current understanding? Since the 2017 New York Times story, momentum toward UFO disclosure has surged. Declassified videos and extraordinary claims from prominent intelligence service members have transformed this from a fringe topic to a serious discussion. Initially planning a serious video about notable UFO cases, the narrative took an unexpected turn. The focus shifted to exploring the strangest encounters ever recorded, from flowery robots to pancake-eating aliens, and possibly even flying Bigfoot. Take the 1974 incident at the weekday newspaper in West Palm Beach. The phone rang, and a receptionist answered to hear an older woman desperate to share her extraordinary story. Something strange had happened, something that demanded attention. The real question isn't just about what these phenomena are, but who might be behind them. Are we ready to face potential truths that challenge our understanding of physics and reality? With continuous outlandish claims and increasing public interest, the UFO discussion has never been more urgent. What do you believe? Are these swamp gas sightings, misidentified weather balloons, or something far more profound? Notchi was a young girl with a secret that had haunted her for 50 years, something she never felt comfortable discussing with anyone. But now, she had decided it was important to share her story, even if no one would believe her. The local newspaper seemed intrigued enough by beauty salon manager Evelyn Wen's account to send a reporter to meet with her. When she began to describe her decades-old experience, the reporter likely thought someone was playing a joke. Yet as Evelyn continued, something about her story began to ring true. Despite how unbelievable it seemed, she genuinely believed this event had occurred. At the time, Evelyn was around 9 years old and living in Pasco County. She was alone, playing outside her school without a care in the world when something caught her attention. A bright light appeared on the lawn just a few feet away from her, not streaking across the sky like typical UFO reports, but sitting right there in the grass. An egg-shaped light glowed with such intensity that Evelyn believed it rendered her momentarily unconscious. When she came to, the object had changed. What was once a blinding glowing egg now looked like a traditional flying saucer, though not a sleek, high-tech model. Instead, it appeared old and beaten up. As she stood almost hypnotized, a hatch on the side of the object opened. That's when she saw them, the occupants emerging. In her own words, little people emerged. I think they were robots. I tried to count them, but they changed about so. They were smaller than I was and rambled and imitated flowers with faces where the bud would be. Remember, I was just a bitty thing then, and kids don't fear flowers. These flower-like creatures were carrying some kind of object between them. Evelyn believed it was a weapon, and they seemed to be pointing it towards her school's science building. Strangely, she felt compelled not to run. Not Evelyn was desperate to help these strange, animated, flower-like creatures. Though they appeared tiny and helpless, she found herself unable to move them even an inch. Up until this moment, the beings had been silent, but suddenly they began communicating with her, not through spoken words but directly into her mind. The creatures warned her about dangerous experiments happening in her school's laboratory, experiments that could potentially destroy the entire place. When Evelyn spoke later about this encounter, she couldn't explain what these experiments might have been or why they seemed so threatening in a 1920s Florida school. After placing some kind of machine, nothing remarkable occurred. The flower beings simply picked up the device and returned it to their craft. Evelyn couldn't determine whether the machine had any purpose or if this was merely a test of her willingness to help. One being offered to show her inside the craft, but Evelyn sensibly declined. They seemed to understand her hesitation. In a cryptic moment, they told her they would return in 35 years, then closed their craft's hatch and began to move. Evelyn later described the UFO as initially leaden-looking and pockmarked, but when it started up, its molecules expanded, turning silvery bright before hovering briefly and disappearing. Sometime after this incident, the school's science building was destroyed, though Evelyn never clarified the details of how or by whom. The 35-year deadline passed, and her flowery friends never reappeared. Evelyn kept this story private for decades. Only in the 1970s did she decide to share her experience, feeling that people had become more receptive to UFO narratives, quite different from the closed-minded atmosphere of the 1920s when the encounter occurred. Nor she couldn't even begin to explain what she had witnessed. Nothing about the experience made sense to her. After her interview, many UFO researchers approached her to learn more details. Some believed her story might be genuine, but worried she could be forgetting critical parts of her account. The events felt fragmented, as if crucial information was missing. An attempt was made to use hypnosis to uncover any suppressed memories, but this effort proved unsuccessful. Her tale is challenging to investigate deeply. Evelyn was the sole witness, and her description sounds so incredible that it strains credibility. Yet the story's sheer strangeness leaves a lingering sense of doubt. It seems too bizarre to be fabricated. Anyone hearing this might notice an odd similarity to a certain clown from the Isle of Wight. Whether true or not, Evelyn provided one of the most unusual UFO accounts ever reported. A story now known as the Date City Flowers Incident. The year was 1981, a dark and quiet night, typical of rural Denmark. PN, a young man in his early 20s, was heading to his warehouse shift in Odense. At 2:10 a.m., he left home and began driving through the silent countryside near Asoma. While traveling along a forest-lined road, something inexplicable occurred. His car's engine suddenly sputtered and died, yet continued rolling down a small hill toward a T-junction. PN hit the brakes, halting the vehicle. Shaken by the near miss, he was momentarily stunned. Before he could comprehend what happened to his car, he looked up and saw something extraordinary. 60 meters ahead, hovering just above the forest floor, was an intensely bright spherical object. 3 meters in diameter, it glowed with an eerie yellow light that illuminated the surrounding trees in an otherworldly manner. Then he noticed something protruding from the glowing orb. A ramp extended to the ground. At its top sat what appeared to be something else entirely. Not an open door revealed an interior that seemed less like a structure and more like a swirling cloud of orange light. But something on the ground quickly drew PN's attention. Near the ramp, 2 distinct groups of beings were at work. The first group consisted of 7 small, greyish figures no taller than a meter. Their bodies appeared almost geometric, like 2 triangles stacked on top of each other, with the smaller triangle serving as their head. They moved with clear purpose, gathering soil and plant samples and handing them off to an unseen recipient inside the craft. The second group was far more unnerving. 3 taller entities stood motionless, 2 at the ramp's entrance, 1 at its base. PN sensed these were guardians, sentinels watching over the scene. Unlike the smaller figures, they held strange devices that could be instruments or weapons. Despite having stubby legs, they didn't walk. Instead, they hovered, gliding effortlessly over the ground. As PN sat frozen in his car, struggling to comprehend the scene, movement caught his eye. A taxi was parked next to a nearby creek, its driver blinking the headlights in rapid succession. The signal's intended recipient was unclear. Was it meant for PN or the beings? Heart racing, PN turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and instantly the figure's head snapped toward him. Without warning, they advanced with terrifying speed, their bodies moving in perfect, unnatural synchronization. Panic overtook him. Before he could think, PN threw the car into gear and tore away, speeding past the T-junction. The taxi executed a sharp 180-degree turn and bolted toward Odense. Trees blurred as he pushed the accelerator to its limit. After roughly 150 meters, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The figures were standing on the bridge, watching him flee. Seconds later, a bend in the road obscured them from view. The taxi driver had long since disappeared. Now arrived at work shaken and breathless, realizing something strange. He was early. The fear-driven drive had propelled him faster than ever before. No matter how many times he replayed the night's events, one question haunted him. What had he stumbled upon? His curiosity eventually overcame his fear. As soon as his shift ended, he returned to the site, scanning the ground for any sign of what he had seen. Burn marks, disturbed earth, anything. But there was nothing. The forest remained still, unmarked, as if the night before had been nothing more than a fevered dream. Except it wasn't. PN kept his secret for years, telling only his family, hesitant to share what he had witnessed. This was a common occurrence among those who had unexplained encounters. It wasn't until 1996, more than a decade later, that the truth finally surfaced. His mother, who along with her husband had experienced a strange encounter involving a UFO stopping their car, contacted Scandinavian UFO Information, a SUFO. 2 investigators were sent to the family home, interviewing PN in depth after discovering the family apparently had more than one experience. PN's conviction was unwavering. He knew what he had seen. He also revealed something unexpected. Since that night, he had developed a kind of precognitive ability. Though he didn't provide much detail on how it worked, he suggested that on some occasions he could see things before they happened. Was there a connection to the entities? He didn't know. The SOFOI team traveled to the sighting location, retracing PN's steps and examining the area for themselves. But the passage of time had erased any trace of the event, though according to PN, there was no trace to begin with. They attempted to track down additional witnesses, even placing a personal ad in a local newspaper, but no one came forward. Despite the lack of evidence, both investigators were convinced that PN's experience was genuine, even if they couldn't say exactly what he had experienced. The awesome encounter remains one of the strangest reports of alien beings ever documented, with its triangular features making it a unique sighting. To this day, PN's account stands as one of Denmark's most compelling and chilling UFO cases. What did he see that night? Who was in the taxi? Did the beings ever come back? Perhaps somewhere out there the Guardians still watch. In the summer of 25, late June to be exact, an ordinary drive home took an extraordinary turn. Driving a small Mazda along Highway 12 northeast from Walla Walla, the nameless witness first noticed something unusual out of the corner of his eye. Initially, he dismissed the anomaly as a large black plastic bag caught in the wind. But as he neared Way Station 51 just past the Walla Walla airport, the situation changed dramatically. The object wasn't a bag. It had form, movement, and a distinctly humanoid shape. Hovering above the power lines, the figure drifted east to west with an unmistakably defined silhouette. Curiosity took over, and the driver pulled over beside the guardrail to get a closer look. Suspended in mid-air, the figure glided effortlessly across the landscape, seemingly heading toward a distant hill. Gripped with adrenaline, he rushed back to his vehicle, determined to follow and understand what he was seeing. Speeding towards Apollo Road, he took a sharp left, hoping to get ahead of the entity. Rounding the bend, he saw it again just half a mile away, maneuvering with eerie precision. The being moved in a straight line, focused on a singular point, appearing to be headed towards an old silo. At a remote four-way intersection, the witness stopped and stepped out of his car. Now the being was closer than ever, no more than 50 yards away, and hovering about 20 feet off the ground. What he saw defied explanation. The figure was massive, standing an estimated 12 feet tall. It moved as if supported by an unseen force, floating rather than walking. Beneath it was a strange device described as 3 red hippity-hop balls tethered together, which seemed to be its mode of propulsion. The being's legs, wide as 2 of those spheres, hung motionless. Most disturbing of all was a detail that would haunt the witness. Something about this flying entity suggested it was far more than a mere coincidence or trick of the light. A dead dog hung from its side by a rope, its lifeless body suspended in mid-air. The entity, whatever it was, seemed to notice the witness looking at it, and it, in turn, looked back. Its movement was deeply unnatural. With a head covered in thick hair, the creature maintained its fixed gaze on the witness even as its body changed direction, its neck rotating like an owl's. What he was seeing defied description, almost impossible to comprehend. Determined to keep the creature in sight, he jumped back into his car, racing down Smith Road. But the entity was already moving lower, dipping below the treetops of a nearby forest. He sped forward, trying to regain visual contact, yet by the time he rounded the final bend, it had vanished into the wilderness. In reflecting on the encounter, one comparison stood out. The creature looked exactly like the legendary figure from the Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967, but this being didn't just walk, it floated through the sky. From a distance, one might suggest this was simply an oddly shaped balloon. The movement descriptions sound balloon-like, yet the details of the witness's proximity reveal a genuinely nightmarish scene, a hairy, giant Bigfoot-like figure, moving with owl-like precision, carrying a dead dog tied with ropes. The witness couldn't definitively state what he had seen, but one thing was certain: something strange was happening in the skies over Walla Walla that summer night. This story's origins trace back to a cryptid spotted numerous times over the years, bearing similarities to this witness's account. The first documented sighting emerged in the 1980s following a significant event. On May 18, 1980, after Mount St. Aity Aspire, Helens erupted. Unverified reports emerged of a winged creature resembling a monkey with red eyes flying through the volcanic plume. Then, on April 19, 1994, at approximately 9:30 p.m., 18-year-old Brian Canfield was driving his truck near Buckley, Washington, in the foothills of Mount Rainier when another encounter occurred. The In-Between channel had previously covered a similar case, which initially sparked excitement about a potential flying Sasquatch. Yet the deeper investigation revealed a more complex narrative about this mysterious aerial cryptid. Canfield's vehicle mysteriously stalled. Suddenly, a massive creature landed about 30 feet ahead on the road. Standing 9 feet tall, it had a wolf-like face, yellow eyes, tufted ears, sharp white teeth, and large wings folded against its back. The creature stared at Canfield for several minutes before dramatically unfurling its wings and taking off with such force that it shook his truck. After the encounter, the vehicle restarted and Canfield drove away. Later, he returned to the site with his mother and a neighbor, but they found no evidence of the strange incident. Local reporter C.R. Roberts interviewed Canfield and found him credible despite the extraordinary nature of his account. That same year, Butch Whitaker claimed to have pictures of the creature, now being called Batsquatch, but never produced them, leading many to doubt his story. Throughout the 1990s, sporadic sightings continued across the country. In 2009, hikers near Mount Shasta in California reported a massive winged creature with a 50-foot wingspan emerging from a mountain crevice. Witnesses initially compared its head to a pterodactyl, then later to a flying fox bat, suggesting the creature had moved from its original Washington habitat. In June 2011, an anonymous individual walking his dog reported seeing a large flying creature with bat-like wings, blue fur, and glowing red eyes, standing approximately 9 feet tall. The creature quickly flew away after being spotted. As recently as 2014, sightings persisted in Ohio. Students in a second-period Spanish class at Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron claimed to have seen a giant black mass, about 9 feet tall with a 20-30-foot wingspan, swiftly passing their classroom window. So when people tell you to keep an eye on the skies, it's not UFOs we should be worried about. Instead, it's those damn dirty 9-foot bat apes, eerily quiet. Not a single animal made a sound. Edwards glanced to his right, noticing his cattle huddled together in the eastern field, all staring intently in one direction beyond the barn. Following their gaze, he spotted an extraordinary sight, a massive, mushroom-shaped object sitting in the adjacent meadow. Its dull grayish-green surface rested on a tubular base. Unable to look away, Edwards continued toward the barn, keeping his eyes fixed on the strange structure. After setting down his feed bucket and securing the doors, he turned back to examine the peculiar craft more closely. That's when he noticed something else entirely, a group of small figures moving frantically beneath the structure. From about 70 feet away, Edwards observed them in remarkable detail. They were incredibly short, no taller than 3 feet, matching the grayish-green color of their craft. Large, wide-set black eyes, which he later wondered might actually be goggles, gave them an unsettling appearance. Their movement was remarkably fast and erratic. Their lower limbs remained obscured, and they wildly flailed their arms, making it difficult to determine if they even had hands. Dark protrusions jutted out where their nose and mouth should have been. Edwards would famously describe them as green penguins from outer space. Most unusually for a UFO witness, Edwards became furious. These strange penguin-like beings had invaded his land and spooked his cattle. He wasn't about to stand by passively. Climbing over the first fence, he gathered the largest rocks he could find and marched toward the beings. His intention wasn't just to scare them away, but to damage their craft enough to prevent it from taking off. As he closed to just 15 feet, something inexplicable happened. He hit an invisible, intangible barrier that completely stopped his forward movement. Now at close range, Edwards studied the craft's details. The domed top stretched approximately 18 feet across, with an apex height of around 8 feet. The hull's surface held his intense gaze, revealing intricate details of this otherworldly visitor. Not a metallic craft stood before Edwards, its surface oddly soft yet gleaming. Oval cutouts dotted its exterior, each about a foot wide, emitting pulsating multicolored lights. Were these windows or some strange form of illumination? Their shifting glow was mesmerizing. Edwards tested the craft's defenses. He picked up a heavy rock and hurled it toward the vessel. The stone struck an invisible barrier, ricocheting harmlessly to the ground. Undeterred, he threw a second rock, meeting the same result. Creatures beneath the craft quickly retreated behind a tube structure, seemingly seeking shelter inside. Without warning, the entire craft began to shift. It tilted toward Edwards, then in another direction. On the third tilt, it lifted effortlessly from the ground. No visible propulsion, no engine sounded, simply floated silently into the sky. Frozen in awe, Edwards watched the ship ascend at breathtaking speed. It leveled out, darting northeast towards St. Elizabeth before vanishing. The entire encounter lasted mere minutes, but would haunt him forever. The story's intrigue deepened with Edwards' reluctance to share his experience. He told only his family, fearing ridicule for describing what he saw as space penguins beneath a metallic mushroom-like craft. His brother, however, believed the story was important. Persistent, the brother contacted UFO investigator Ted Phillips, pleading for Edwards to speak about his encounter. After considerable persuasion, Edwards agreed, but only if his identity remained confidential. He later gave a few anonymous interviews, with the full account published only after his death. This bizarre tale of unexplained encounters would become just another mysterious chapter in the vast collection of UFO sightings waiting to be understood. Joe was in the middle of washing dishes when an abrupt noise caught his attention. Outside, he spotted something extraordinary, a metallic object descending vertically, like an elevator, reminiscent of screeching car tires. At first, he thought something might have happened to his roof, but the unfamiliar brightness suggested otherwise. Joe rushed outside to get a better look. Hovering just above his driveway was a gleaming, chrome-like craft. It looked like two inverted bowls pressed together, a classic flying saucer shape suspended in the air without touching the ground. A hatch opened, revealing a figure no taller than 5 feet. The being had a dark complexion, similar to someone of Italian descent. Its face was smooth and hairless, with a tight-fitting cap covering its head. Despite the strange encounter, Joe felt surprisingly calm. The being gestured, mimicking drinking, and then handed Joe a metallic container with side handles. When Joe looked into its eyes, he found them so penetrating that he had to look away. Something about its presence was unnerving, yet Joe didn't feel afraid. Joe took the container inside, filled it from his basement water pump, and returned it to the waiting figure. As he did, he steadied himself against the craft. Later, when asked about potential burns or unusual effects from touching the surface, he reported nothing out of the ordinary. While returning the container, Joe struggled to maintain eye contact. When he did look, he felt as if the being was looking straight through him, most reading his thoughts. Inside the craft, he noticed 2 additional figures wearing seamless, dark, hooded tunics. They appeared focused on specific tasks, secured by what seemed like safety belts. One figure worked at a control panel, while the other operated a heated grill-like device producing smoke but no visible flames. Curious about their activity, Joe gestured as if eating. In response, the being who had been standing in the doorway walked off and scooped up several small, round objects. No, Joe Simonton, a plumber who raised chickens on the side, had an extraordinary encounter that would change his life. While in his driveway, he was approached by beings who handed him strange pancake-like objects. These hot, greasy discs were perforated with small holes and tasted like cardboard. A detail Joe believed might explain the visitor's small stature. Before leaving, one of the beings performed an unfamiliar gesture, touching its forehead before sealing the hatch. Joe interpreted this as a salute and returned the motion. The hatch disappeared seamlessly, leaving no trace. Moments later, the craft rose about 20 feet, tilted at a 45-degree angle, and shot off at incredible speed, barely disturbing a nearby pine tree. The aftermath was profound. 23 of Joe's chickens died shortly after the encounter, and the incident brought both curiosity and ridicule. Investigators found Simonton sincere, though many were skeptical. The encounter effectively halted his plumbing work as people were hesitant to hire the chicken farmer associated with this bizarre story. Simonton preserved some of the pancakes and showed them to Judge Franklin Carter, a local UFO enthusiast. Carter arranged further analysis, and the samples eventually reached the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NECAP. Though initially reluctant, the group's test revealed the pancakes were primarily made of buckwheat flour, mundane ingredients that seemed to contradict the extraordinary circumstances. The story gained additional credibility through corroborating witnesses. Local insurance agent Savino Borgo reported seeing an unidentified flying object in the area. Phyllis Lorbetsky and her 3 children also claimed to have witnessed a UFO on the same day. The strange encounter left Joe Simonton caught between ridicule and genuine mystery, his life forever altered by those few moments in his driveway. Not Joe's story has captivated audiences for years, and it's easy to see why. His account stands out as incredibly unusual, but what truly makes it compelling is how genuine he seems. Anyone who watches his original interview can't help but be struck by how normal he appears. The mystery surrounding what happened to Joe in his driveway back in 1961 remains unresolved, yet it has become one of the most talked about UFO encounters in history. Strange tales abound: a plumber receiving extraterrestrial pancakes, a penguin-like visitor from distant stars, a winged Bigfoot soaring over wilderness landscapes. Each narrative seems more incredible than the last, yet each is told with such conviction, shrouded in a mysterious haze that refuses to dissipate. Are these stories the result of wild imaginations, misidentifications, or something lurking just beyond our comprehension? When you're alone on a quiet road or hear an unexplained noise in the darkness, remember, people have sworn to witnessing the impossible, and perhaps you might be about to join their ranks. This entry in the tape library wasn't initially planned. I had intended to explore the disclosure movement, but several smaller cases suggested by listeners didn't quite merit full episodes. Combining them seemed like an engaging approach. I appreciate everyone who recommended stories like the Dade City encounters. These strange little events are always fascinating to discuss. After some intense research-heavy episodes, listening to plumbers talk about alien pancakes felt refreshingly light. The current conversations around unidentified aerial phenomena are fascinating and significant. This episode isn't meant to diminish those discussions, but to playfully explore some of the stranger stories out there. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know in the comments. Hitting like and subscribe really helps support the channel. I'll be taking a brief break to focus on some external projects, with the next episode being the long-awaited Volume 8 of our Scary Stories series. No to Fall Asleep is a series. Mostly, these are compilations of previous stories I've covered, but this time I'm hoping to record some brand new stories to include as well. There should be something for everyone here. Don't worry, I'll be back later in April with a brand new deep dive. If all goes to plan, it'll be another story requested by one of you, and it's a creepy one. Want to support the show? You can do that through YouTube memberships and Patreon. Let's recognize those Patreon supporters who keep the lights on in the archive libraries. Our library archivists include Umerko Grimm, Sandy Lusk, Restark_1731, Mira, Judith Hacker, Gabrielle Eric Salas, Destiny M, Ashlove's Books, Deegan O'Dale, Dirtnap 6969, Lady Beten Noir, Ade Alm, Peter McCann, Jolly Jetty, The Crimson DM, Harrison Steele, Juno, Georgia Harvey Dominic, DeAngelis, Dean J. Daly, The Crimson DM, Harrison Steele, Juno, Georgia Harvey Dominic, DeAngelis, Dean J. Daly, The Crimson DM, Harrison Steele, Juno, Georgia Harvey Dominic, DeAngelis, J. Joe, Sad Girl, Callie, Dala, Kira, Midi is a Beam, Montana Martin, Sirius _Whack the Detective, Emmy, Barkley, Alfredo Sandoval, and Tucker REVB. Lead archivists are Vaniel, Brian Baker, Old Solicamine, Lord William, Trashi Torello, Xavier Wrangle, Tyler Michael, Rick DeCoulis, 1000 Ghost, London Grace, Melissa Harrison, Creepy Candy, Plague Doctor is in, Amy Stubblefield, Alex O'Neill, and Alex Goldberg. Our extremely generous Grand Overseers include Morning Rain 2619, Katie, Egan 355, Leah Carmella, and Battle. Thank you all for your continued support, and thanks to you for making it to the end of the episode. Until next time, pleasant dreams. For most of human history, the idea that we were not alone was just an idea. It was a subject of myths, religions, and science fiction, something to wonder about and speculate on, but never to know. Recently, something changed. A small group of people started pushing the idea that there was something more to this. Governments, long accused of covering up the truth, began letting us peek behind the curtain. Admissions started coming. High-ranking officials, decorated pilots, and intelligence insiders stepped forward. They weren't talking about lights in the sky, swamp gas, or mistaken weather balloons. They were describing technology that defied our understanding of physics. The real question wasn't just what these things were, but who was behind them. With each declassified document, leaked information, and public statement from insiders, a hidden narrative is breaking through to the surface. 3 possibilities exist. First, what has been reported could be a natural phenomenon, misidentified by countless military personnel and pilots worldwide. Second, this might involve advanced man-made technology so sophisticated that no one is claiming responsibility. Or there's a third option. What if everything we've been told is wrong? What if we're standing on the edge of a reality far more expansive than we ever imagined? Since the New York Times story in 2017, momentum has been building toward government disclosure about UFOs. Declassified videos and increasingly bold claims from prominent intelligence service members suggest this topic demands more attention than ever before. I originally planned a serious video exploring notable cases that have advanced UFO disclosure. But then I thought, why not take a more entertaining approach? The strangest UFO encounters ever recorded could be far more compelling. A few episodes back, I asked about paranormal beliefs. Now, I'm curious, do you believe in UFOs? What do you think they are? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Prepare for a wild ride. From flowery robots to pancake-eating aliens, maybe even a flying Bigfoot or two, things are about to get very strange. In 1974, a Florida newspaper's phone rang. The receptionist at the Weekday in West Palm Beach answered to find an older woman desperate to speak with a reporter. She had a story, a strange experience from her childhood that had haunted her for 50 years. This was an encounter she had never felt comfortable sharing, but now she felt compelled to reveal her extraordinary tale, regardless of whether anyone would believe her. The newspaper had taken an interest in Evelyn Wen's story, sending a reporter to meet with the beauty salon manager. At first, the reporter likely thought someone was playing a joke. But as Evelyn continued speaking, something about her account began to ring true. Evelyn was around 9 years old at the time, living in Pasco County. She was playing outside her school, carefree, when something caught her attention. A bright light was glowing on the lawn just a few feet away, not streaking across the sky like typical UFO reports, but right there on the ground. An egg-shaped light so intense, Evelyn believed it momentarily rendered her unconscious. When her memory shifted, the object had transformed. What was once a blinding glow now looked like a traditional flying saucer, but an old, beaten-up version, not sleek or high-tech. As she stood almost hypnotized, a hatch on the side of the object opened. That's when she saw them, the occupants emerging. In her own words, little people emerged. I think they were our robots. I tried to count them, but they changed about so. They were smaller than I was and resembled animated flowers with faces where the bud would be. Remember, I was just a bitty thing then, and kids don't fear flowers. These flower creatures were carrying an object which Evelyn believed might be a weapon. They seemed to be attempting to point it towards her school's science building. Strangely, instead of running away, she felt compelled to help them. The creatures appeared receptive to her assistance, yet despite the object being small, she found herself unable to move it. Evelyn described feeling desperate to help these seemingly helpless tiny beings. They seemed small, vulnerable, and in need of support, a sentiment that kept her rooted to the spot, unable to flee or fully comprehend the bizarre encounter. Evelyn kept her extraordinary encounter to herself for decades. In the 1920s, she had witnessed something so bizarre that explaining it seemed impossible. The little girl's experience involved mysterious flower-like beings who communicated with her telepathically, warning her about dangerous experiments happening in her school's laboratory. During the encounter, these beings placed a strange machine near her, but nothing visibly happened. Without explanation, they simply picked it up and returned it to their craft. When one offered to take her inside the spacecraft, Evelyn sensibly declined. Their parting message was cryptic. They would return in 35 years. The craft itself was remarkable. Evelyn described it as leaden-looking and pockmarked initially, but when it started up, its molecules expanded, turning silvery bright. It hovered briefly before disappearing from sight. Curiously, sometime after this incident, the school's science building was indeed destroyed, though Evelyn never clarified the details of this destruction. The 35-year deadline passed, and her flowery friends never returned. It wasn't until the 1970s that Evelyn finally shared her story, feeling that people had become more open to UFO discussions. Her revelation attracted significant attention in the UFO research community. Many researchers were intrigued but skeptical, wondering if she might be forgetting or misremembering key details of her extraordinary childhood encounter. The year was 1981, a dark and quiet night in the Danish countryside. Nothing usually happened here. PN, a young man in his early 20s, set out for his warehouse shift in Odense. The roads were empty, and Arsum village lay deadly silent as he left home at precisely 2:10 a.m. Suddenly, something inexplicable occurred. His car's engine sputtered, coughed and died while rolling down a small hill near a forest-lined road. PN instinctively hit the brakes, bringing the vehicle to a halt. Panic gripped him. This could have ended badly if the roads weren't so deserted. Before he could process what happened to his car, he glanced up and saw something extraordinary. 60 meters ahead, hovering just above the forest floor, was a brilliantly bright sphere. 3 meters in diameter, it glowed with an eerie yellow hue that bathed the surrounding trees in an otherworldly light. Then he noticed something even stranger. A ramp extended from the floating orb to the ground. At its top was an open door revealing an interior that seemed less like a structure and more like a swirling amorphous cloud of orange light. But something else caught his attention. Figures were on the ground. The events felt disjointed, as if parts were missing. An attempt was made to hypnotize Evelyn, the only witness, to uncover any suppressed memories, but this proved unsuccessful. Her account sounds so fantastical that it's hard to believe. Yet the sheer strangeness leaves a lingering doubt. It feels too weird to be fabricated. There's an undeniable similarity to a certain clown from the Isle of Wight. Whether this truly happened or not, Evelyn provided one of the strangest UFO stories ever reported, an account known to this day as the Dade City Flowers. Gnome PN sat frozen in his car, struggling to comprehend the bizarre scene unfolding before him. Near the ramp, 2 distinctly different groups of beings were at work. The first group consisted of 7 small, greyish figures no taller than a meter. Their bodies appeared almost geometric, like 2 triangles stacked on top of each other, with what seemed to be smaller triangles serving as heads. They moved with clear purpose, collecting soil and plant samples and handing them off to an unseen recipient inside the craft. Standing nearby, the second group was far more unsettling. 3 taller entities positioned themselves strategically, 2 at the ramp's entrance, 1 at its base. These beings felt like guardians, sentinels watching everything. Unlike their smaller counterparts, they held strange devices that could have been instruments or weapons. Though they had small, stubby legs, they didn't walk. Instead, they hovered, gliding effortlessly over the ground. Just when PN thought the scene couldn't get stranger, movement caught his eye. A taxi was parked next to a creek off the road, its driver blinking headlights in rapid succession. Was the signal meant for PN or the beings? Heart pounding, he turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, and instantly the figure's heads snapped toward him. Without warning, they advanced with terrifying speed, moving in perfect, unnatural synchronization. Panic overwhelming him, PN threw the car into gear and tore away. He sped past the T-junction, following the taxi as it executed a sharp turn toward Odense. Trees blurred past as he pushed the pair, accelerated to its limit. After roughly 150 meters, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The figure stood on the bridge, watching him flee. Seconds later, a bend in the road swallowed them from view. The taxi driver was already gone. At work, shaken and breathless, PN realized something odd. He was early. The fear-fueled drive had made him faster than ever before. Yet no matter how many times he replayed the night's events, one haunting question remained. What had he just witnessed? Despite the forest appearing undisturbed, something extraordinary had happened. PN kept this encounter secret for years, sharing details only with his family, a common hesitation among witnesses of strange events. It wasn't until 1996, more than a decade later, that the truth began to emerge. His mother, who along with her husband had experienced a strange UFO encounter that stopped their car, contacted Scandinavian UFO Information, SUFOY. Two investigators arrived at the family home, conducting an in-depth interview after discovering multiple unusual experiences. PN's conviction remained absolute. He knew exactly what he had witnessed. An unexpected revelation came to light. Since that night, he claimed to have developed a precognitive ability. Though he offered few specifics, he suggested he could sometimes see events before they occurred. Whether this connected to the entities remained unclear. The SUFOY team traveled to the original sighting location, attempting to retrace PN's steps. However, time had erased any physical evidence. They tried tracking down additional witnesses, even placing a personal ad in a local newspaper searching for the unknown taxi driver. No one came forward. Despite the lack of concrete proof, the investigators were convinced of PN's genuine experience. The Assam encounter stood out as one of the strangest alien being reports, particularly notable for the triangular features described. To this day, PN's account remains one of Denmark's most compelling and chilling UFO cases. Questions lingered. What did PN truly see that night? Who was in the taxi? Did these beings ever return? Perhaps, somewhere out there, unknown guardians continue to watch. A brief pause from alien narratives reveals another unexplainable phenomenon potentially lurking in our skies, something potentially even more dangerous. The Flying Bigfoot incident unfolded in the summer of 25 when an ordinary drive home took an unexpected turn. A highway witness encountered something extraordinary while driving a small Mazda northeast from Walla Walla. At first he thought he saw a large black plastic bag caught in the wind, barely registering the unusual object hovering in his peripheral vision. As he approached Way Station 51 near the Walla Walla airport, the situation changed. The object wasn't just a bag, it had a distinct form and movement. Floating above the power lines, its silhouette became unmistakably humanoid, drifting slowly from east to west. Curiosity took over. He pulled to the guardrail and stepped out for a better view. Suspended in midair, the figure glided effortlessly across the landscape, seemingly heading toward a distant hill. Gripped by adrenaline, he rushed back to his vehicle, determined to follow and understand what he was witnessing. Speeding towards Sapollo Road, he took a sharp left, hoping to get ahead of the entity. Rounding the bend, he spotted it again, just half a mile away. The figure moved with eerie precision, traveling in an almost perfectly straight line, as if focused on a singular point. Its destination appeared to be an old silo. At a remote four-way intersection, he stopped and stepped out again. Now the being was closer than ever known. More than 50 yards away, hovering about 20 feet off the ground. The details were becoming increasingly unsettling. The figure was massive, standing an estimated 12 feet tall. It moved as if supported by an invisible force, floating rather than walking. Beneath it was a strange device described as 3 red hippity-hop balls tethered together, which seemed to be its mode of propulsion. Its legs, wide as the spheres, hung motionless. Most disturbing of all, a dead dog dangled from its side, tied with a rope, its lifeless body swaying in the air. Then, something even more chilling happened. The entity seemed to notice the witness watching, and it looked back. When it turned, the movement was unnatural. Its head, covered in thick hair, rotated in a way that defied normal human movement. In that moment, the witness realized this was far from an ordinary encounter. The creature's head remained fixed on the witness, its neck rotating owl-like as its body shifted direction. He struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. The sight nearly defied description. Racing down Smith Road, he was determined to keep the strange entity in sight. As it dropped lower, dipping beneath the treetops of a nearby forest, he sped forward, trying to maintain visual contact. By the time he rounded the final bend, the creature had vanished into the wilderness. In reflecting on the encounter, one comparison dominated. The being looked exactly like the legendary figure from the Patterson-Gimlin film, except this one didn't walk, but floated through the sky. From a distance, one might dismiss this as an oddly shaped balloon. Yet the witness's closer details paint a far more unsettling picture. A hairy, giant, Bigfoot-like figure moved with an owl's peculiar motion, seemingly carrying a dead dog tied with ropes below it. While the witness couldn't confirm every detail, something undeniably strange had occurred that summer night in Walla Walla. The first widely recognized sighting of this cryptid dates back to the 1980s, following the Mount St. Helens eruption. Unverified reports emerged of a winged monkey-like creature with red eyes flying through the volcanic plume. Another significant encounter happened on April 19, 1994, near Buckley, Washington. 18-year-old Brian Canfield was driving when his truck inexplicably stalled. A large creature landed about 30 feet ahead, standing 9 feet tall. Canfield described it as having bluish fur, a wolf-like face, yellow eyes, tufted ears, sharp white teeth, and large wings folded against its back. When the in-between channel revealed they had previously covered a similar case, my initial excitement about a flying Sasquatch somewhat diminished. However, the story remained intriguing. A cryptid spotted numerous times, bearing remarkable similarities to this witness's extraordinary account. Roberts interviewed Canfield and found him sincere despite his unusual claims. Several minutes later, a massive creature unfurled its wings and took off with enough force to shake the truck. Afterward, the vehicle restarted, and Canfield drove away. He later returned to the site with his mother and a neighbor, but found no evidence of the encounter. That same year, Butch Whitaker claimed he had pictures of the creature now being referred to as Bat Squatch, but he never provided them, leading many to doubt his claims. Throughout the 90s, sightings continued sporadically around the country. In 2009, hikers near Mount Shasta in California reported a massive creature with leathery wings. Estimated to have a wingspan of 50 feet, it emerged from a mountain crevice. Initially, one witness compared its head to a pterodactyl, but later described it more like a flying fox bat. It seemed the creature had moved away from the Washington area. In June 2011, an unidentified individual walking his dog in his yard observed a large flying creature. He described it as having bat-like wings, blue fur, and glowing red eyes, standing approximately 9 feet tall. The creature quickly flew away after being spotted. As recently as 2014, the creature was seen in Ohio, a place with numerous apparent sightings. Students in a second-period Spanish class at Archbishop Hoban High School in Akron claimed to have seen a giant black mass. Approximately 9 feet tall with a wingspan of 20-30 feet, it swiftly flew past their classroom window. So when people tell you to keep an eye on the skies, it's not UFOs we should be worried about. Instead, it's those damn dirty 9-foot bat apes. Non Edwards gazed across the adjacent meadow and spotted an astonishing sight, a massive mushroom-shaped object with a dull grayish-green hue standing atop a tubular base. He continued toward the barn, but his eyes never left this strange structure. As he set down his feed bucket and secured the doors, he noticed something more. Beneath the weird craft, a group of small figures moved frantically. From about 70 feet away, he observed them in keen detail. These beings were incredibly short, no taller than 3 feet, matching the grayish-green color of their craft. Their large, wide-set black eyes, which Edwards couldn't decide were actual eyes or goggles, gave them an unsettling appearance. They moved with remarkable speed, their lower limbs obscured and arms flailing wildly. Some dark protrusion jutted out where their nose and mouth should have been. Edwards would later describe them memorably as green penguins from outer space. Most unusually for a UFO witness, Edwards became furious that these strange, penguin-like creatures were on his land. They had spooked his cattle and invaded his farm, and he wasn't about to stand by passively. He climbed over the first fence, gathered the biggest rocks he could find, and marched toward the beings. His intention wasn't just to scare them away, but to damage their craft enough to prevent it from taking off. As he closed to just 15 feet away, something inexplicable occurred. He hit an invisible wall. There was no tangible barrier he could see or feel, yet he was completely unable to move forward. Now at close range, he took in the finer details of the craft. The dome top spanned about 18 feet across, with an apex height of around 8 feet. The hull appeared metallic yet oddly soft, as if crafted from a seamless, futuristic material. Evenly spaced oval cutouts, each about a foot wide, emitted pulsating multicolored light. It remained unclear whether these were windows, energy ports, or something entirely different. When he first spotted the craft, it lacked traditional windows but emitted an otherworldly, shifting glow. Testing its boundaries, he picked up a heavy rock and hurled it toward the vessel. The stone struck an invisible barrier, bouncing away without a sound. A second rock met the same fate. Beneath the craft, creatures quickly retreated into a tubular structure at its base. Suddenly, the entire craft began shifting, tilting in different directions before lifting effortlessly from the ground. No engines, no visible propulsion explained its movement. It simply rose silently into the sky. Frozen in awe, Edwards watched the ship ascend at incredible speed, leveling out and darting northeast toward St. Elizabeth. The entire encounter lasted mere minutes but would haunt him forever. The story's complexity deepened with Edwards' reluctance to share his experience. He told only his family, fearing ridicule for describing what he saw as space penguins beneath a metallic mushroom-like structure. His brother, however, believed the story was too important to keep quiet. Pushing Edwards, his brother contacted UFO investigator Ted Phillips. After considerable persuasion, Edwards agreed to discuss his encounter, insisting on anonymity. He later gave a few hushed interviews, always protecting his identity. The full account of Edwards's extraordinary encounter only emerged after his death. His story remained shrouded in mystery, a testament to the strange and unexplained. Joe first noticed something unusual was happening. A gleaming, chrome-like craft hovered just above his driveway, suspended in midair without touching the ground. The structure looked like two inverted bowls pressed together. A classic flying saucer shape, roughly 30 feet wide and 12 feet high. A figure emerged from a hatch, standing no taller than 5 feet. The being had a dark complexion, reminiscent of someone with Italian heritage. Its face was smooth and hairless, covered by a tight-fitting cap. When the being gestured to him, mimicking drinking water, it handed Joe a metallic container with side handles. Joe found the being's eyes incredibly intense, so penetrating that he had to look away. Despite this unnerving presence, he felt strangely calm. The figure seemed to communicate without words, and Joe sensed something extraordinary was happening. Inside the craft, Joe noticed two additional figures wearing seamless dark hooded tunics. They appeared focused on specific tasks, secured by what looked like safety belts. One worked at a control panel while the other managed a heated grill-like device producing smoke but no visible flames. When Joe gestured about food, the being walked over to the grill, scooping up small round objects that resembled pancakes. They were hot, greasy, and full of small holes. After taking a bite, Joe described the tea, taste as cardboard-like, speculating that such a food source might explain the being's small size. Joe took the container inside, filled it from his basement water pump, and returned it to the waiting figure. He steadied himself against the craft during this process. Interestingly, despite many reports of burns from close UFO encounters, Joe reported no unusual effects from touching the surface. The entire experience left Joe with a profound sense that the being could read his thoughts, not just instinctively, but as if directly accessing his mind. Something about the encounter suggested an intelligence far beyond his understanding. Before departing, the visitor performed an unfamiliar gesture, touching its forehead momentarily before shutting the hatch. Joe, interpreting this as a salute, returned the motion. The hatch sealed without a trace, appearing as if it had never existed. Moments later, the craft rose about 20 feet, tilted at a 45-degree angle, and shot off at incredible speed, leaving behind only a disturbed pine tree that swayed violently but showed no lasting damage, Standing in his driveway with greasy pancakes in hand, Joe was overwhelmed by the extraordinary events. His bizarre story attracted both curiosity and ridicule. Investigators were skeptical but noted that Simonton seemed sincere and had little to gain from fabricating such an account. He was frustrated by the public's reaction, especially being labeled a chicken farmer when he only raised chickens as a side business. By trade, he was a plumber, and he claimed the encounter had stopped him from getting work. Many people didn't want to hire the pancake alien guy. Interestingly, 23 of Joe's chickens died shortly after the visitors had been to the farm. Simonton kept a few of the strange pancakes and later showed them to Judge Franklin Carter, a local UFO enthusiast. Carter arranged for further analysis. One sample was sent to the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, NICAP, a civilian UFO research group led by retired Marine Major Donald Kehoe. Though NICAP initially claimed they did not analyze the sample, conflicting reports suggested it was tested and revealed to be made of simple earthly ingredients, primarily buckwheat flour. The group seemed hesitant to get too involved, feeling the case was too silly for serious consideration. Additional reports emerged from the same day. Local insurance agent Savino Borgo claimed to have seen an unidentified flying object in the area. Phyllis Lorbetska and her 3 children also reported seeing a UFO. Joe stuck to his story, and it has resonated with many over the years for 2 major reasons. First, it is an incredibly unusual account. Second, Joe comes across as genuinely sincere. His interviews from the time show him as a remarkably normal guy, which lends credibility to his extraordinary tale. Joe's experience in his driveway remains shrouded in uncertainty, with tales that challenge belief: a plumber encountering extraterrestrial pancakes, a penguin-like visitor from beyond the stars, a winged Bigfoot soaring over wilderness. Each account seems more incredible than the last, yet each is told with unwavering conviction. These stories are wrapped in a persistent mystery that refuses to dissipate. Are they the product of misidentified phenomena, wild imaginations, or something lurking just beyond human comprehension? When you're alone on a quiet road, or hear an unexplained noise in the darkness, remember, there are those who swear they've witnessed the impossible. You might be moments away from becoming one of them. This entry in the tape library wasn't originally planned. I had intended to explore the disclosure movement, but several smaller cases suggested by listeners didn't quite warrant full episodes on their own. Combining them seemed like an engaging approach. The Dade City flower stories have always been fascinating to me. After some intense research-heavy episodes, listening to plumbers discuss pancake aliens felt refreshingly lighthearted. The ongoing conversations about unidentified aerial phenomena are fascinating and significant. This episode isn't meant to trivialize those discussions, but to playfully explore some of the stranger narratives out there. I'll be taking a brief pause to complete some external work projects. The next episode will be Volume 8 of our Scary Stories to Fall Asleep to series. While these typically compile previous stories with minimal advertising, I'm hoping to include some brand new narratives. If you enjoyed this episode, please engage in the comments, like the content, and subscribe. Your support means everything. I apologize, but the tech